Hello everyone, and welcome to the Ben 10 What Ifs. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Ben 10 got harem of all alien queens. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Converging Fates. The Omnitrix hummed against Ben Tennyson's wrist. Its familiar weight now as much a part of him as his own heartbeat. Morning sunlight filtered through half-drawn blinds, casting slanted golden bars across his apartment's worn hardwood floor. 5 years had transformed both the device and its wearer. The once bulky watch had evolved into something more elegant, a sleek emerald band that responded to his thoughts as much as his touch. And Ben himself. He stared at his reflection as he adjusted the collar of his diplomatic uniform, black with green accents, bearing the intergalactic symbol for Earth's official representative. At 21, his features had sharpened. Jawline more defined, eyes carrying the quiet confidence that came only from experience. Not the cocky teenager who'd stumbled through saving the universe, but a man who'd earned his reputation across a dozen star systems. Tennyson. Rook's voice crackled through his communicator, interrupting his thoughts. Your presence is required immediately at headquarters. Multiple Level 1 alerts simultaneously triggering across 5 sectors. Ben's posture shifted instantly. Level 1 meant planetary extinction events. Multiple meant coordination failure among plumber divisions. On my way. Brief me en route. He snatched his jacket and was out the door in seconds, the apartment locking automatically behind him. The specialized plumber vehicle waited outside, hovering silently above the pavement. As he slid into the driver's seat, the navigation system activated, calculating the fastest route to the underground facility. Computer, secure channel to Rook, Ben commanded, guiding the vehicle into morning traffic before engaging the flight conversion. The car shimmered briefly as its camouflage activated, rendering it invisible to civilian eyes before it shot skyward. 5 distinct anomalies detected simultaneously, Rook explained, his feline features appearing on the holographic display. Floritopia, the Chrysan Empire, the Oceanic Collective, the Quantum Nexus, and the Pyros Dominion. Ben frowned. That's not random. Those are all sovereign systems with minimal diplomatic interaction between them. Precisely why Magister Tennyson requested you specifically. These civilizations barely communicate with each other, but all maintain independent treaties with Earth. The vehicle descended rapidly toward what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse district. Authentication signals transmitted automatically, and a section of ground retracted to reveal the entrance to plumber headquarters. Any pattern to the anomalies? Ben asked, guiding the vehicle into its designated bay. Unknown. Each anomaly manifests differently according to preliminary reports. The Magistrata has authorized emergency protocols. The Magistrata's direct involvement sent a chill through Ben. The supreme authority of the plumbers intervened only in cases threatening multiple civilizations. I'm here, Ben said, stepping from the vehicle into the organized chaos of headquarters' main operations center. Dozens of aliens and humans moved with practiced urgency between holographic displays and communication stations. At the center of it all stood his grandfather, Magister Maxwell Tennyson, silver-haired but standing as straight and commanding as ever. Ben, Max acknowledged with a nod that conveyed both affection and professional respect. We have a situation that requires your unique qualifications. Diplomatic crisis or Omnitrix intervention? Ben asked, falling into step beside his grandfather as they moved toward the situation room. Both, Max replied grimly. Whatever's happening affects the fundamental stability of these worlds. We've got quantum fluctuations, reality distortions, and reports of entire sections of planets simply vanishing. The situation room doors slid open to reveal a circular chamber where holographic representations of the 5 affected worlds rotated slowly above the central table. Each projection flickered occasionally, displaying areas of distortion marked in pulsing red. We've received formal requests for assistance from all 5 systems within the span of 30 minutes, Max continued. That's unprecedented. These civilizations rarely acknowledge each other's existence, let alone experience identical crises simultaneously. Rook stood at the briefing table, manipulating the holographic display to highlight affected areas. The anomalies appear to be expanding. Floritopia reports the most aggressive progression, with 17% of their agricultural zones already affected. What exactly happens in these affected zones? Ben asked, studying the patterns of distortion. That's where reports diverge, Rook said. On Floritopia, plant matter decays rapidly before disappearing entirely. In the Chrysan Empire, crystalline structures shatter and dissolve. The Oceanic Collective reports consciousness fragmentation among affected populations. And the others, Uantum Nexus experiences technology failure followed by spatial warping. Pyro's Dominion reports stellar instabilities threatening their entire civilization. Ben circled the table, examining each world's representation. Different symptoms, same disease. That's our working theory, Max confirmed. And why we need you, Ben. You're not just our representative to these worlds, you're the only PERS. On who's personally visited all 5 systems and maintains positive diplomatic relations with each ruler. The door to the Situation Room hissed open, and a junior plumber entered, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Magister Tennyson, we have a visitor insisting on speaking with Ambassador Tennyson. We're in the middle of a crisis, Lieutenant, Max began. Sir, it's a botanical emissary from Floritopia. It says it's carrying an urgent message from Queen Xylora herself. Ben and Max exchanged glances. Bring it here, Ben decided. If Xylora sent an emissary directly instead of using communication channels. Something's preventing standard contact. Minutes later, the doors parted again to admit what appeared to be a slender humanoid composed entirely of interwoven vines and flowering branches. Its features shifted constantly, flowers opening and closing to form approximations of eyes and mouth. A sweet, almost intoxicating fragrance filled the room. Ambassador Tennyson, the creature's voice rustled like wind through leaves. I am Thorn, voice of Her Majesty Queen Xylora of the Eternal Gardens. I bring grave tidings and a personal request from my sovereign. Welcome, voice Thorn, Ben replied formally. Recognizing the Floritopian diplomatic protocol, Earth stands ready to assist our allies. Please share your sovereign's message. The botanical being's form rippled, and a flower in its center bloomed fully to project a small hologram of Queen Xylora herself. Even in miniature, her regal presence was unmistakable, her body a perfect melding of humanoid and plant. With skin like polished mahogany and hair a cascade of living vines adorned with luminescent blossoms. Ambassador Tennyson, her melodic voice filled the room. Darkness encroaches upon the gardens of Floritopia. The roots of existence fray and wither within our realm. My scientists believe something fundamental in the fabric of reality unravels around us. Her expression revealed genuine concern beneath royal composure. I request your presence not merely as Earth's voice, but as the wielder of the Omnitrix. This malady defies our understanding, but legends speak of your ability to transform challenges as you transform yourself. The hologram flickered momentarily, distortion rippling through the Queen's image. Time grows short. My emissary carries within its form the biological coordinates for direct teleportation. We remember your service during the Hybridian conflict and call upon that alliance once more. Her image stabilized, eyes meeting Ben's directly. Some among M.Y. Court Council isolation in this time of crisis. I believe differently. United growth thrives where divided stems wither. The hologram faded, and Thorn's flowers closed once more. The situation deteriorates rapidly, Ambassador. The emissary added. Queen Xylora's garden mind has calculated complete planetary failure within 27 rotations if the anomaly continues its current expansion rate. 27 days until total planetary collapse, Rook translated quietly. Ben turned to Max. Grandfather, I need to go immediately. If similar timeframes apply to all 5 worlds. Agreed, Max said, but we need coordination. These worlds need to communicate with each other, not just through us. One crisis at a time, Ben replied. Let me assess Floritopia firsthand, then we'll establish a response protocol. He turned to the botanical emissary. Thorn, I accept Queen Xylora's invitation. How soon can we depart? Immediately, Ambassador. My form contains specialized ors capable of initiating quantum botanical teleportation once I've absorbed sufficient solar radiation. Rook raised an eyebrow. Floritopian teleportation technology is strictly regulated. They Saint consider this an exceptional circumstance. Prepare a full diplomatic kit and emergency response package, Max ordered a nearby plumber. Ben, keep communications open as much as possible. If these anomalies are connected, what you learn on Floratopia may help us understand what's happening elsewhere. Within minutes, Ben stood in the Plumber Headquarters Arboretum, a specialization section designed for photosynthetic species. Thorn had spread branch-like limbs to absorb the artificial sunlight, its body glowing with accumulated energy. The teleportation process may be disorienting for non-botanical lifeforms. Thorn warned as vines began to encircle Ben. Your body will temporarily convert to energy patterns stored within specialized spore matrices before reassembling at our destination. I've been teleported, transformed, and transmogrified more times than I can count, Ben said with a wry smile. Just one more weird Tuesday. Your reputation for adaptation precedes you, Ambassador, Thorn replied, its tone suggesting something like admiration. The Queen spoke truly when she said you transform more than just your outer form. The vines completed their lattice around Ben, forming a cocoon of living matter. Through small gaps, he saw Max and Rook watching with professional concern. Be careful, Ben, his grandfather said simply. Initiation sequence commencing, Thorn announced as flowers throughout its body began to pulse with bioluminescent light. Botanical teleportation in 3, 2, 1. The world dissolved into verdant light. Cons. Eousness returned in waves of sensation. The rich scent of loam and nectar, distant chiming sounds like crystal raindrops, and a profound sense of aliveness in the very air. Ben gasped as his lungs reformed, drawing in oxygen so pure it made his head spin momentarily. Breathe shallowly at first, Ambassador, a melodic voice advised. Our atmosphere contains higher concentrations of oxygen and botanical pheromones than Earth's. Ben's vision cleared to reveal a vast chamber that defied conventional architecture. Walls, ceiling, and floor all lived, pulsing gently with their own rhythms, bloom. In patterns that seemed to follow some complex mathematical sequence. Sunlight filtered through translucent canopies hundreds of feet above, casting rainbow-hued patterns across the living floor. And before him stood Queen Xylora herself. In person, she towered over him by nearly 2 feet, her form a perfect synthesis of plant and humanoid that shifted subtly with each movement. Her skin lead polished wood with patterns like growth rings swirling across its surface. Instead of hair, dozens of vines cascaded from her crown, adorned with luminescent flowers that seemed to pulse in time with her thoughts. Her eyes contained no pupils, instead glowing with an inner emerald light. Queen Xylora, Ben said, bowing precisely as Floratopian protocol demanded. Earth answers your call. I come as both ambassador and defender. The Queen's features shifted into what Ben recognized as a smile, the wooden texture of her face flowing like liquid. Rise, Benjamin Tennyson. We have moved beyond such formalities since you helped preserve our world's eternal seed vault during the Hybridian conflict. As Ben straightened, he noticed they weren't alone. A dozen other Floratopians stood in a semicircle, each unique in their botanical composition. Some resembled ambulatory trees, others delicate flowering vines, and still others appeared as living topiaries sculpted into complex forms. My root council, Xylora explained, gesturing toward them with a graceful movement that sent ripples through her vine hair. The elders of our 7 great growth sectors. One council member stepped forward, a stocky, bark-covered being with mushrooms growing from his shoulders. This is highly irregular, Your Majesty. To bring an outsider directly into the heart chamber during crisis. Ambassador Tennyson is no mere outsider. Elder Oakhart, Xylora replied, her tone gentle but firm. He carries within his device the genetic essence of our own kind, among countless others. He understands transformation as the fundamental nature of existence, a principle our people have revered since first taking root. With respect, Your Majesty, understanding our philosophy and possessing our genetic code does not make him Floratopian. Another elder interjected. This one appeared feminine, composed of interwoven climbing roses whose thorns gleamed like polished obsidian. Elder Thornissa speaks wisdom, rumbled a massive counselor whose body resembled ancient redwood. The matter fading threatens the very roots of our world. We should look inward, not outward, for solutions. Ben remained silent, recognizing the political dynamics at play. Xylora had clearly faced opposition in requesting outside assistance, yet had done so anyway, a significant decision for a species known for their self-sufficiency. The Queen's luminescent eyes found his. Perhaps our guest might demonstrate why I believe his unique perspective may offer what we cannot provide ourselves. Ben nodded slightly, understanding the subtle request. With your permission, Your Majesty, he said, activating the Omnitrix. The device responded instantly, its holographic interface materializing above his wrist. The Ru-Ti Council collectively shifted backward as Ben selected the appropriate transformation and pressed down on the dial. Emerald light engulfed him as familiar sensation of molecular reconfiguration coursed through his body. His consciousness expanded into an entirely different sensory framework, one that perceived nutrients in soil, chemical signals in the air, and the subtle electromagnetic fields of living beings. As the transformation completed, he stood before them as Wildvine, a flora similar to their own species, yet distinctly different. Remarkable, whispered one of the previously skeptical elders. He retains his consciousness while assuming our form. Not precisely your form, Ben replied, his voice deeper and resonating differently through his transformed vocal structures. He flora species shares evolutionary patterns with Floratopians but developed along a different path. I perceive your world differently in this form. I can sense the disturbance now, like a discorda. NT note in an otherwise harmonious symphony. Queen Xylora moved closer, examining him with evident fascination. This is why I called you, Ambassador. You bridge worlds not merely through diplomacy but through direct experience. You can perceive both as outsider and as kin. Ben shifted back to human form with another flash of green light. I'm honored by your trust, Your Majesty. Now, please show me these anomalies directly. The more I understand, the better I can help. The Queen nodded, then turned to address her council. Elders, return to your sectors and implement the containment protocols we discussed. Ambassador Tennyson and I will examine the largest rupture in the Western Growth Zone. Though clearly still hesitant, the council members bowed and departed through various openings in the living walls. As they left, Ben noticed how the chamber itself seemed to respond to their passing, flowers turning to track their movements, vines shifting to ease their path. Your Council doesn't fully support reaching out to Earth, Ben observed once they were alone. Xylora's expression shifted, concern revealing itself more plainly. Floratopians are like the ancient sequoias of your world, Ambassador. We put down deep roots and resist sudden change. For many, especially the elder growth, turning to external sources represents failure of our self-sufficiency. Yet you did it anyway, Ben noted. That couldn't have been an easy decision politically. She began walking toward an arched opening that widened as they approached. Politics withers before survival, Ambassador. Follow me. What you must see defies description. They passed through the living architecture of what Ben recognized as the central governing complex of Floratopia, the legendary Bloom Palace. Unlike his previous diplomatic visit years earlier, the hallways now contained far fewer Floratopians, and those present moved with urgent purpose rather than the deliberate grace typical of their species. Your people seem concerned, Ben observed. They sense the wrongness, even those without scientific understanding, Xylora replied. Plant species perceive threats differently than animals. Fear is a surge of chemicals preparing for fight or flight. We experience it as a systemic withdrawal, a collective pulling inward. They entered what appeared to be a transportation hub where massy, seed-shaped pods waited along twisted vine tracks. Xylora gestured toward one, and it split open in response, revealing comfortable interior surfaces contoured for both humanoid and plant-based physiologies. These will take us to the Western Growth Zone, she explained as they entered. The pod sealed itself around them and accelerated smoothly into a transparent tube that arched through the canopy of the Floratopian capital. As they traveled, Ben marveled at the vista below. Floratopia's architecture blended seamlessly with its natural ecosystem, living buildings sprouting from ancient trees. Waterways flowing through carefully cultivated wetlands, and everywhere the sense of meticulous biological engineering that had made their civilization one of the most environmentally advanced in the galaxy. Yet even from this distance, he could see signs of the crisis. Sections of the western horizon appeared blurred, as though reality itself grew uncertain at the edges. How long has this been happening? Ben asked. The first micro-fissures appeared 18 cycles ago, approximately 14 Earth days, Xylora replied. At first, our scientists believed it was a localized phenomenon, affecting only certain botanical species. We soon realized it was consuming everything: organic matter, atmosphere, even the subsoil geological formations. Has anything like this happened before in your history? Never, she said firmly. Our historical archives span back nearly 12,000 years. No record mentions reality simply unmaking itself. She turned to face him fully. That is what occurs, Ambassador. Not destruction, unmaking. The affected areas don't burn or decay or transform. They cease to be. No matter, no energy, no space, nothing remains. The transportation pod SL.O'd as they approached the boundary of what clearly served as a containment zone. Floratopian guards equipped with technology far more advanced than Ben had previously seen on their world stood at regular intervals along a shimmering barrier. As they disembarked, one guard approached. Unlike most Floratopians, this one's body appeared heavily modified, bark armor grafted directly into their form. And what looked like technological implants merged with their plant-based biology. Captain Branchcutter, Xylora acknowledged. Report. The guard's salute involved a complex movement where Severa L vines briefly intertwined before separating. The anomaly expanded another 12 meters during the night cycle, Your Majesty. Containment field strength at 73% and declining. We've evacuated all civilian growth within 3 kilometers. And the research team. The captain's expression darkened, wooden features hardening visibly. Dr. Seedsmith ventured too close during a field strength test. We were unable to retrieve him. Xylora closed her eyes briefly, luminescent flowers in her vine hair dimming momentarily. His essence returns to the universal garden. His sacrifice will not be forgotten. She turned to Ben. Ambassador, what you are about to witness defies explanation. Please remain behind the containment barrier at all times. They proceeded through a checkpoint where Ben noticed specialized scanning equipment analyzing them at a molecular level. Beyond, the path led to an observation platform overlooking what should have been a vast agricultural zone. Instead, Ben found himself staring into nothingness. Not darkness, not empty space, nothingness. The affected area appeared as a perfect absence, a void so complete it hurt his eyes to look directly at it. The edges shimmered with unstable energy, occasionally pulsing outward before the containment field forced them back. By the stars, Ben whispered, the diplomatic facade momentarily dropped. In the face of something that defied comprehension. We call it the unmaking, Xylora said quietly. Our instruments cannot penetrate it. Drones sent inside never return. Matter that touches the boundary simply stops existing. Ben activated the Omnitrix, scrolling through alien forms. With your permission, I'd like to transform into something that might perceive this differently. At Xylora's nod, he selected Chromastone and initiated the transformation. His body reconstructed itself into the crystalline alien form capable of absorbing and redirecting energy. Through Chromastone's unique perception, the anomaly appeared differently, a pulsing wound in the fabric of reality, leaking not energy but its absence. Interesting, he said, his voice now resonating with crystalline tones. It's not just destroying matter, it's consuming the energy patterns that define space itself. Can your Earth science explain this phenomenon? Xylora asked. Not Earth science alone, Ben replied, studying the anomaly carefully. But I've encountered something vaguely similar before. During the Time War crisis, Professor Paradox showed me temporal fractures, places where timelines had been damaged. And your conclusion, Ambassador? The Queen's tone held tightly controlled anxiety. Ben reverted to human form, his expression grave. This isn't a natural phenomenon, Your Majesty. The perfect geometrical boundaries, the consistent expansion rate, something or someone is deliberately creating this effect. Before Xylora could respond, the containment field directly before them fluctuated violently. Alarms sounded as Floratopian guards rushed to reinforce the barrier with portable generators. Field integrity at 42% and failing. Captain Branchcutter shouted. Evacuation protocol Seedfall now in effect. We need to leave immediately, Xylora said, grasping Ben's arm with surprising strength. If the field collapses, a deafening crack split the air as reality itself seemed to bend around the anomaly's edge. The containment field shattered in a cascade of energy, and the nothingness began expanding rapidly toward them. No time, Ben shouted, activating the Omnitrix again. In a flash of green light, he transformed into Jetre, an aerophobian capable of supersonic flight. Hold on, he commanded, securing Xylora with his talon feet before launching skyward. Below them, the observation platform disappeared into the expanding void, along with several guards who couldn't evacuate quickly enough. The nothingness surged outward in a perfect circle, summing everything in its path with clinical precision. My people, Xylora whispered, her wooden features contorted with grief as she watched portions of her world simply cease to exist. Ben flew to what appeared to be a secondary command post several kilometers from the expansion zone. As they landed, he shifted back to human form and watched as Floritopian emergency teams mobilized with remarkable efficiency. That wasn't a natural expansion, he said grimly. Something triggered it specifically when we were observing. You believe we were targeted? Xylora asked, her tone hardening. As she shifted from grief to tactical assessment with royal discipline. I can't confirm it yet, but the timing is too convenient, Ben replied. Queen Xylora, I need to contact Earth immediately. If similar anomalies are affecting other worlds. Ambassador Tennyson, a Floritopian communications specialist, approached rapidly. We've received emergency transmissions from 4 other systems reporting identical phenomena. Each message specifically requests your intervention. Ben and Xylora exchanged alarmed glances. Which systems? Ben asked, though he already suspected the answer. The Chrysan Empire, the Oceanic Collective, the Quantum Nexus, and the Pyros Dominion, the specialist confirmed. All 5 affected simultaneously, all 5 reaching out independently, Ben said, the implications settling heavily upon him. This isn't coincidence. Someone wants these specific worlds destabilized. But why these 5 systems? Xylora questioned. We share no common resources, maintain minimal diplomatic relations, and exist in entirely different stellar regions. Ben's expression turned grim. Perhaps that's precisely why you were chosen. 5 powerful civilizations with mal-communication between them, perfect targets for isolated attacks. Yet now we are communicating, Xylora observed. Perhaps that is what our adversary sought to prevent. A commotion at the perimeter drew their attention as several guards escorted a Floritopian scientist whose body showed signs of severe energy exposure, portions of their plant matter blackened and withering. Your Majesty, the scientist gasped. Barely able to stand, something emerged from the void before the containment field failed. I managed to capture this recording before my equipment failed. The scientist extended a withered limb, projecting a holographic image from what appeared to be an implanted device. The recording showed the edge of the nothingness pulsing strangely before something pushed through. Figure composed of shifting darkness outlined in crackling energy. The figure turned toward the camera, revealing not a face but a swirling vortex where features should be. It extended what might have been an arm. And the recording abruptly ended. What was that? Xylora whispered. Ben's expression darkened. I don't know, but I've seen energy patterns like that before. Whatever came through isn't from our reality. It's from somewhere between. The communication specialist approached again, even more urgently. Ambassador, we've established emergency contact with Plumber headquarters on Earth. Magister Tennyson is requesting immediate conference. Within moments, a holographic projection of Max Tennyson materialized before them. Even through the distortion of faster-than-light communication, his concern was evident. Ben, we're receiving reports of containment failures on all 5 worlds simultaneously. Whatever these anomalies are, they've all accelerated expansion at exactly the same time. Someone's coordinating this, Grandfather, Ben replied. We witnessed what appears to be an entity emerging from the void here on Floritopia. Definitely extra-dimensional in origin. Max nodded grimly. The Quantum Nexus reported something similar. Their sensors detected what they described as a reality inversion before their containment systems failed. These cannot be isolated incidents. Queen Xylora interjected. 5 sovereign worlds experiencing identical crises that escalate simultaneously. We are being systematically attacked. Agreed, Max said. Ben, we need to coordinate a unified response. Each world has requested your specific assistance, but you can't be in 5 places at once. Ben considered for a moment. Maybe I don't need to be. Queen Xylora, WOU. LDU be willing to join me in visiting the other affected worlds. Your botanical knowledge combined with my transformative abilities might help us identify patterns others would miss. Xylora straightened, her regal bearing becoming even more pronounced. A Floritopian sovereign has not left our world in over 2,000 years, Ambassador. Yet these are unprecedented times. If my knowledge can help preserve not only Floritopia but other realms, then my roots must extend beyond our soil. It's settled then, Ben said. Grandfather, please inform the other worlds that I'm bringing Queen XY Laura with me to assess each situation personally. Request that their leaders prepare to potentially join our coalition as we proceed. A council of queens, Xylora mused. 5 sovereigns from 5 worlds united against a common threat. Unprecedented in galactic history. Precisely why it might work, Ben replied. Whoever or whatever is behind this clearly expects these worlds to face the crisis in isolation. By bringing you together, we create something they couldn't have prepared for. I'll make the arrangements, Max confirmed. The Chryssan Empire is geographically closest to your current position. High Commander Taylera has already granted emergency clearance for your arrival. We'll depart immediately, Ben said. The Rust Bucket 3 should be able to reach Chryssan space within 6 hours. Ambassador, Xylora said as the communication ended, our people have a saying. Seeds scattered by catastrophe often take root in unexpected places. Perhaps this crisis, terrible though it is, will plant something new among the stars. Ben nodded thoughtfully. Earth has similar wisdom, Your Majesty. We say that the darkest times often reveal the brightest lights. As they prepare to depart for the plumber vessel that would take them to the Chryssan Empire, Ben gazed back at the expanding nothingness on the horizon. Whatever had emerged from that void had purpose and intelligence. NCE, and had specifically targeted 5 of the most powerful civilizations in this sector of the galaxy. The question was why, and more importantly, how to stop it before reality itself unraveled completely. The journey to the Rust Bucket 3 proved more complicated than anticipated. The anomaly's expansion had disrupted Floritopia's transportation network, forcing them to reroute multiple times through increasingly congested evacuation zones. Frightened civilians moved in ordered but dense processions away from the Western Growth Zone, their botanical bodies laden with seedlings and essential cultural artifacts. Your people are remarkably disciplined, Ben observed as they passed through another checkpoint. No panic, no disorder. Xylora's expression conveyed both pride and sadness. We evolved from species that respond to environmental threats collectively. When danger approaches, our instinct is not individual flight but coordinated preservation of the whole. She gesture. D toward families carrying specialized pods. Each contains genetically diverse samples from their family lines. If the worst occurs, our people can regrow elsewhere. The gravity of the situation struck Ben anew. These weren't just evacuees, they were preparing for the possible extinction of their civilization. Their transport finally cleared the city boundaries, reaching the secure landing zone where the Rust Bucket 3 waited. The sleek plumber vessel represented the pinnacle of intergalactic technology, customized specifically for Ben's missions. Its green and black hull gleamed in Floritopia's afternoon sunlight, the Omnitrix symbol prominently displayed on its side. As they approached, the entry ramp extended automatically, recognizing Ben's Omnitrix signature. Inside, the ship's systems activated. Holographic displays illuminating the command center. Welcome back, Ambassador Tennyson, the ship's AI greeted. And welcome, Queen Xylora of Floritopia. It is an honor to host planetary royalty. Thank you, Xylora replied, examining the technology with evident curiosity. This vessel is considerably different from Floritopian transports. The Rust Bucket 3 has been extensively modified for diplomatic and emergency response missions, Ben explained, settling into the pilot's chair. It can adapt its internal environment to support virtually any life form and contains defensive capabilities that hopefully we won't need to use. As Ben initiated the pre-launch sequence, a priority communication alert flashed across the main screen. Incoming transmission from the Chryssan Empire, the AI announced. Priority Alpha. On screen, Ben commanded. The display shifted to show a crystalline being whose form refracted light in mesmerizing patterns. Unlike the organic fluidity of Floritopians, the Chryssan's body exhibited perfect geometric precision, faceted surfaces arranged in symmetrical patterns that seemed to shift subtly as they moved. When they spoke, their Ice resonated with harmonic overtones that made the very air vibrate. Ambassador Tennyson, the crystalline being addressed formally. I am High Commander Taylera of the Crisson Imperial Guard. Our situation has deteriorated significantly. The anomaly now threatens our capital crystalline matrix. We request immediate assistance. High Commander, Ben acknowledged with appropriate formality. We, preparing for immediate departure from Floritopia. Estimated arrival at the Crisson Empire in 6 hours. 5 hours may be too late, Ambassador, Taylera replied, her crystalline features somehow conveying urgency despite their rigid structure. Our scientists report exponential acceleration in the anomaly's expansion rate. At current progression, critical systems will begin failing within 4 hours. Ben glanced at Xylora, who nodded almost imperceptibly. High Commander, I'm bringing Queen Xylora of Floritopia with me. Her world faces identical phenomena. We believe coordinated respo, NSE between affected worlds offers the best chance for containment. Taylera's crystalline form stiffened noticeably, a reaction Ben recognized as surprise or possibly disapproval. The Crisson Empire maintained notoriously isolationist policies, particularly regarding organic species they considered impermanent, compared to their crystalline longevity. Floritopian involvement was unanticipated, Taylera stated carefully. However, crisis protocols supersede standard diplomatic restrictions. We will prepare for both your arrivals. One more thing, Ben added. Have you detected any entities emerging from the anomalies? Floritopia witnessed what appeared to be an extra-dimensional being manifesting shortly before containment failure. The crystalline commander's facets darkened momentarily. Affirmative. Our perimeter sensors recorded energy patterns consistent with dimensional transition approximately 14 minutes ago. The entity disabled 3 guard units before retreating into the anomaly. Can you transmit your sensor data? We need to determine if we're dealing with identical entities or different manifestations. Data transmission initiated, Taylera confirmed. Ambassador, the Crisson Empire has stood for 17,000 cycles. We have never encountered a threat we could not overcome through strategic application of force. Yet this enemy, her voice read harmonic undertones of what Ben recognized as fear. This enemy cannot be fought by conventional means. That's why conventional responses won't work, Ben said confidently. We'll be there soon, High Commander. Tennyson out. As the transmission ended, Ben accelerated the launch sequence, and the Rust Bucket 3 rose smoothly from Floritopia's surface. Through the viewports, the expanding void was clearly visible on the horizon, a perfect absence growing steadily larger against the vibrant green landscape. Your interaction with the Crisson commander was fascinating, Xylora observed as they broke atmosphere. You navigated their formal communication protocols flawlessly. Ben smiled slightly. 5 years of diplomatic missions teaches you to adapt quickly. The Crisson Empire values precision and hierarchical acknowledgement. They respond best to direct statements delivered in the correct order of priority. While we Floritopians prefer organic conversation that grows naturally between participants. Xylora noted with what Ben recognized as her version of amusement, the flowers in her vine hair briefly emitting a sweet fragrance. Exactly, Ben replied, setting the course toward Crisson space. Each civilization communicates according to their evolutionary history and social structure. Crystalline beings who can live for millennia develop very different communication patterns than plant-based species adapted to seasonal cycles. As the Rust Bucket 3 entered hyperspace, Ben transferred piloting to the autopilot and turned to face Xylora fully. Before we arrive, there's something you should know about the Crissons. They consider organic lifeforms inherently inferior due to our shorter lifespans and biological impermanence. High Commander Taylera will be professional but may express these biases subtly. I am familiar with crystalline prejudice, Xylora replied calmly. They view our biological adaptation as weakness rather than strength. They fail to understand that impermanence drives innovation. Ben nodded. Exactly. And they particularly struggle with the concept of transformation, which is why my abilities often confuse them. A being that can its fundamental nature challenges their entire worldview. Perhaps that is precisely what they need, Xylora suggested. As you said earlier, conventional responses will not suffice against this threat. Their conversation paused as the ship's computer announced incoming data from the Crisson Empire. Ben transferred it to the holographic display in the center of the command deck. The recording showed a Christen security perimeter similar to what they'd witnessed on Floritopia, though implemented with crystalline technology. The anomaly appeared identical, a perfect absence expanding with geometric precision. As they watched, the edge of the void pulsed rhythmically before a figure emerged. Unlike the shadowy entity from Floritopia, this one appeared as a crystalline formation, but inverted somehow. Its geometry following impossible patterns that hurt the eyes to observe directly. It moved with mechanical precision toward the Christen guards, extending limbs that seemed to exist in multiple positions simultaneously. Pause and enhance, Ben commanded. The image froze and magnified, revealing a disturbing detail. Within the crystalline aberration structure, tiny fragments of T appeared to be Christen material were visible, as though it had absorbed and reconstituted parts of previous victims. It's adapting, Ben realized aloud. The entity that emerged on Floritopia appeared plant-like in structure. This one manifests with crystalline properties matching Christen physiology. Mimicry, Xylora questioned. Or absorption. Maybe both, Ben said grimly. Computer, compa, re-energy signatures from both manifestations. After a moment, the AI responded. Baseline energy patterns are identical. Superficial differences appear to be adaptive camouflage rather than distinct entities. So one entity capable of manifesting differently on each world, Ben concluded. That suggests intelligence and purpose, not random dimensional bleeding. A hunter adapting to its environment, Xylora observed. Or a scout gathering information. The implication hung heavily between them. If these manifestations were merely scouts, what was their purpose? And what larger force might follow? We need to accelerate, Ben decided, returning to the pilot's controls and overriding the safety protocols. Computer, divert power from non-essential systems to propulsion. Calculate maximum safe hyperspace velocity. Warning. Recommended safety margins will be exceeded by 27%, the AI cautioned. Acknowledged. Execute. The Rust Bucket 3 surged forward, its FR. Aim vibrating slightly as it pushed beyond standard operational parameters. The hyperspace tunnel outside the viewports compressed as their velocity increased. Revised arrival estimate. 2 hours, 47 minutes. The computer announced. Still potentially too late, Ben muttered. Xylora moved beside him, placing a wooden hand on his shoulder. Ambassador, perhaps your unique abilities offer another solution. Your Omnitrix contains the genetic code for a Chronosapien, does it not? Ben looked up sharply. Clockwork. Yes, but temporal manipulation on this scale is incredibly risky. Miscalculation could create a time paradox. A calculated risk may be necessary. If these anomalies are indeed coordinated attacks, timing could be crucial to understanding the pattern. Ben considered her suggestion carefully. Clockwork's time powers had saved him countless times, but usually in localized applications. Affecting the timestream across interstellar distances carried significant dangers. You're right, he decided finally. Computer, establish secure connection to Plumber headquarters. Priority channel to Professor Paradox. The screen flickered momentarily before display. The message. Chronological communications offline. Temporal disruption detected in surrounding space. Ben's expression darkened. That confirms it. Whatever these anomalies are, they're affecting time as well as space. Professor Paradox would have responded otherwise. Then we proceed with what resources we have, Xylora stated pragmatically. For the next hour, they analyzed the data from both manifestations. Searching for patterns or weaknesses. The entities seemed to exist partially outside normal physical laws, appearing simultaneously solid and intangible, affecting matter through proximity rather than direct contact. Their work was interrupted by another incoming transmission, this time from the Oceanic Collective. The screen resolved to show a being unlike either Floritopian or Christen. The sovereign of the Oceanic Collective appeared humanoid but with translucent blue skin through which complex circulatory systems were visible. Her eyes contained no pupils, instead swirling with patterns resembling ocean currents. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from multiple sources simultaneously. Ambassador Tennyson, the multiple tones harmonized. I am Sovereign Maria of the Oceanic Collective. My civilization faces imminent dissolution. The nothingness spreads through both physical space and our collective consciousness. I request immediate intervention. Sovereign Maria. Ben acknowledged. We're currently en route to the Christian Empire, facing similar phenomena. Can you contain the anomaly for approximately 5 hours until we can reach your world? Negative. The multiple voices replied with perfect synchronization. The disruptive effect has entered our consciousness network. Individual minds are being severed from the collective. Those affected experience total personality dissolution before physical dematerialization. I estimate collective integrity failure within 3 hours. Ben exchanged alarmed glances with Xylora. The situation was deteriorating faster than they could respond physically. Sovereign, I'm transmitting data regarding the entities we've observed emerging from the anomalies, Ben said. Have you witnessed similar manifestations? Affirmative, Maria responded. A being composed of liquid consciousness breached our containment barrier approximately 30 minutes ago. It absorbed 17 UAL minds from our collective before retreating. As we suspected, Xylora interjected. The entity adapts to each world's primary life form. Sovereign Maria, Ben continued, I have Queen Xylora of Floritopia with me. We're establishing a coalition of the affected worlds. Would you be willing to join our unified response? The Sovereign's fluid features registered surprise, ripples passing across her translucent skin. The collective has not aligned with external civilizations in 12 generations. However, her voices momentarily fell out of perfect synchronization before realigning. Unprecedented threats require unprecedented alliances. I will join your coalition. Thank you, Sovereign. Now, I need you to prepare for our arrival. Gather all data on the anomaly's effects on your collective consciousness. That information may be crucial to understanding how to counter these entities. I will comply. But Ambassador, the Sovereign's many voices took on a tone of deep concern. Those severed from the collective before dissolution report sensing a vast intelligence within the void. Not malevolent, but utterly alien in its conception of existence. They describe it as the unmaking of all separateness. Single quote. The communication ended, leaving Ben and Xylora with a troubling new perspective on what they faced. The unmaking of all separateness, Xylora repeated softly. A consciousness that perceives individual existence as an aberration to be corrected. Or a predator that's found a way to cross between dimensions and sees our reality as hunting grounds, Ben countered. Either way, we need to reach the Christian Empire immediately and establish our coalition before more worlds are affected. The Rust Bucket 3 continued its accelerated journey through hyperspace, pushing its systems to their limits. Outside, the fabric of space-time occasionally rippled with distortions that the ship's sensors couldn't properly classify, further evidence that whatever affected these worlds was spreading throughout the region. As they approached Christian space, the computer alerted them to yet another incoming transmission, this time from an unexpected source. Priority message from the Quantum Nexus. The AI announced. Origin. Empress Nixaria's personal quantum entanglement channel. The Quantum Nexus rarely communicates directly with anyone, Ben noted with surprise. They usually work through intermediaries. The screen resolved to show a being that defied conventional physical description. Empress Nixaria appeared to exist partially in multiple dimensions simultaneously, her form shifting between states of matter in complex patterns that followed some incomprehensible logic. When she spoke, her voice seemed to precede her words, creating an unsettling echo effect. Ambassador Tennyson, she stated, her tone clinically precise. Our probability matrices indicate catastrophic reality failure across all affected worlds within 7.4 hours unless intervention occurs at a quantum level. We have analyzed the dimensional breaches and determined they originate from a space between conventional realities, what our scientists classify as the Void Collective. Ben leaned forward intently. Empress Nixaria, what exactly is the Void Collective? A theoretical consciousness existing in the spaces where realities terminate, she explained, her form briefly splitting into multiple overlapping versions before reconverging. Neither matter nor energy in conventional terms, but a state of potential existence that perceives defined reality as an impediment to its expansion. And you believe this Void Collective is deliberately targeting your worlds? Xylora asked. Probability approaches certainty, the Empress replied. Our quantum sensors detected purpose in the pattern of breaches. They follow mathematical sequences consistent with conscious intent rather than random dimensional decay. Have you developed any effective countermeasures? Ben asked hopefully. Temporary quantum stabilization fields slow the expansion but cannot prevent it. However, the Empress paused, her multidimensional form seeming to calculate something complex. We have theorized that a synchronized application of 5 distinct energy signatures, one from each affected world, might create a resonance barrier the void cannot penetrate. That would require representatives from all 5 worlds working in perfect coordination, Ben noted. Precisely why we are contacting you directly, Ambassador. Our probability models indicate your unique transformative abilities. Combined with representatives from each world, create a 73.2% probability of successful containment. Ben nodded decisively. Empress Nixaria, we're currently en route to the Chrisen Empire. Queen Xylora of Floritopia accompanies me, and Sovereign Maria of the Oceanic Collective has agreed to join our coalition. Would you be willing to meet us there with your quantum technology? Calculation complete, Nixaria stated after a brief pause. Despite significant risk factors, cooperation represents optimal survival probability. We will prepare for immediate departure. Her form flickered momentarily. Ambassador, one critical data point. Our sensors detect a massive dimensional disturbance forming near the Pyro's dominion. If our models are correct, the primary breach will occur there within 9.2 hours. The Pyro's dominion, Ben repeated, concern evident in his voice. Have you made contact with Grand Archancora? Negative. The plasma interference surrounding their stellar habitats prevents conventional communication. However, the dimensional disturbance centered on their primary star exceeds all others by a factor of 7. Whatever the Void Collective intends, the Pyro's dominion appears to be its focal point. After the transmission ended, Ben immediately adjusted their flight plan. Computer, after Chrisen Empire, set course for the Pyro's dominion rather than the Oceanic Collective. Revised flight plan established, the AI confirmed. The Pyro's dominion, Xylora said thoughtfully. A civilization of plasma beings living within stars. If these anomalies affect them most severely, then whatever's coming through feeds on energy, Ben concluded grimly. And stars represent the richest energy sources in our universe. The Rust Bucket 3 drop, ed out of hyperspace at the edge of Chrisen territory, immediately greeted by a squadron of crystalline vessels arranged in perfect geometric formation. Unlike the organic designs of Floritopia, Chrisen architecture followed rigid mathematical principles, each ship a flawless polyhedron whose facets reflected starlight in dazzling patterns. Chrisen Imperial Guard to Earth Vessel Rust Bucket 3, came the formal hail. Ambassador Tennyson and Queen Xylora of Floritopia are granted emergency passage to the Crystal Nexus. Follow our escort precisely. As they approached the Chrisen homeworld, the devastation became apparent. Nearly 1/4 of the crystalline planet's surface had been consumed by the expanding void, a perfect geometric absence slowly devouring the otherwise flawless world. By the Eternal Garden, Xylora whispered as they began their descent toward what remained of the capital city. The progression is far more advanced here than on Floritopia. Ben nodded grimly. The Chrisens believe in confronting threats directly. They probably attempted to study the anomaly more aggressively than your scientists did. And paid the price for that aggression, Xylora observed soberly. The Rust Bucket 3 landed on a crystalline platform that adjusted its molecular structure to secure the vessel. Outside, a delegation of Chrisen officials waited in formal arrangement, each posy tioned according to their exact rank in a perfect hierarchical pattern. At their center stood High Commander Taylera, her crystalline form more intricate and geometrically complex than those around her. Unlike the others, whose bodies consisted of single crystal types, Taylera's form incorporated multiple crystalline variations arranged in precise patterns that seemed to shift subtly with her movements. As Ben and Xylora descended the ramp, the Chrisen officials performed a synchronized movement, each rotating exactly 45 degrees to their right to form a pathway toward their leader. Ambassador Tennyson, Taylera acknowledged formally, her voice resonating with harmonic overtones. Queen Xylora of Floritopia, the Chrisen Empire welcomes you in this time of mutual crisis. High Commander Taylera, Ben replied with equal formality. We come in the spirit of alliance against a threat that transcends our individual worlds. The crystalline commander inclined her precisely faceted head before turning toward Xylora. Queen Xylora, this marks the first diplomatic contact between our civilizations in 743 cycles. While circumstances are regrettable, the Empire acknowledges the historical significance. All life faces the same void, High Commander, Xylora responded diplomatically. In the Garden of Existence, different species may grow in separate beds. Yet all require the same light to flourish. Ben suppressed a smile at Xylora's perfect response, botanical metaphors delivered with just enough formality to satisfy Chrisen protocol while subtly reminding them of their shared vulnerability as living beings. Your metaphor, while organic in nature, contains logical merit, Taylera conceded. Please accompany me to the strategic facet. To add, additional representatives will join us shortly. As they followed Taylera through the crystalline city, Ben was struck by both its mathematical beauty and the eerie silence. Chrisen cities normally resonated with harmonic frequencies as their inhabitants communicated through subtle vibrations, but now an unnatural quiet prevailed, broken only by the occasional sound of distant crystal shattering as structures collapsed near the anomaly's edge. Your people are evacuating? Ben inquired. Negative, Taylera replied without turning. Chrisens do not flee. We stand, we adapt, or we shatter. Those who can fight remain. The others have entered suspended animation within our deep storage matrices. Forgive my directness, Xylora interjected, but such philosophy may not serve against an enemy. It cannot be defeated through conventional resistance. Taylera's crystalline form stiffened momentarily before she responded. Our scientists have reached similar conclusions. This enemy unmakes our very existence. Our warriors cannot fight what they cannot touch, and our greatest weapons pass through the void without effect. They entered what appeared to be a command center carved from a single massive crystal. Holographic displays showed real-time monitoring of the anomaly's expansion across the planet, with countdown timers indicating failure points for critical systems. As you can see, Taylera explained, gesturing toward the displays, we have approximately 4 hours before the void reaches our central matrix. When that occurs, all Chrisen consciousness will terminate simultaneously. Complete civilization extinction, Ben said grimly. Precisely. Which is why, despite our traditional self-reliance, we have agreed to your proposed coalition. Taylera turned to face them directly, her crystalline features somehow conveying both pride and resignation. The Chrisen Empire has stood apart for 17,000 cycles. Today, we stand together or cease to stand at all. A junior officer approached with perfect geometric movement. High Commander, vessels from the Oceanic Collective and Quantum Nexus have entered orbit. Sovereign Maria and Empress Nixaria request immediate clearance to descend. Granted, Taylera responded. Escort them here directly. Ben exchanged surprised glances with Xylora. They've arrived simultaneously. That's weeks of travel time for conventional vessels. Perhaps the crisis has inspired technological cooperation, Xylora suggested. Minutes later, the command center's entrance reconfigured to admit two beings as different own each other as they were from the Chrisens. Sovereign Maria flowed into the room, her liquid-like body moving with graceful undulation. Close up, Ben could see the complexity of her form, currents of varying densities flowing through transparent tissues, carrying what appeared to be information patterns rather than merely nutrients. Her eyes swirled with patterns resembling weather systems viewed from orbit. Beside her, Empress Nixaria's multidimensional form shifted between states of matter, sometimes appearing solid, sometimes gaseous, occasionally seeming to exist as pure energy before reconsolidating. Her movements left brief afterimages as though multiple versions of herself existed simultaneously in slightly different positions. The council assembles, Ben said quietly, feeling the historic significance of the moment. 4 sovereign rulers of vastly different civilizations, gathered in one room for the first time in recorded history. Introductions proceeded according to Karif. Yuli negotiated protocol, each leader acknowledging the others with appropriate cultural gestures while maintaining their own diplomatic traditions. I bring greetings from the collective, Maria said, her multiple voices creating harmonies that resonated pleasantly even in the crystalline chamber. Though our waters have never touched Chrisen shores, we flow now in the same direction. The Quantum Nexus acknowledges this unprecedented convergence of probability streams, Nixaria stated, her form briefly splitting into 5 overlapping versions before reconsolidating. According to our calculations, This exact configuration of representatives occurs in less than 0.0003% of all possible timeline iterations. Yet here we stand, Taylera observed. 4 sovereigns and an ambassador, united by common threat. Not 4. Ben corrected gently. We still need to reach the Pyro's dominion. According to Empress Nixaria's data, they face the most severe manifestation of the anomaly. The Fire Dwellers, Taylera said. Harmonic undertones suggesting disapproval. Their volatile nature makes them unpredictable allies at best. Perhaps, Xylora interjected diplomatically, but their energy manipulation abilities may prove crucial against an enemy that consumes reality itself. My collective consciousness has analyzed all available data, Maria offered, ripples passing across her liquid form. The pattern suggests the void entities require representatives from all 5 affected worlds to implement effective containment. Probability analysis confirms this assessment, Nixaria added. Our quantum technicians have developed prototype resonance barriers that could theoretically repel the void entities, but successful implementation requires energy signatures from all 5 civilizations, including the Pyro's dominion. Ben nodded decisively. Then our course is clear. We must reach the Pyro's dominion immediately and convince Grand Archankora to join our coalition. A significant diplomatic challenge, Taylera observed dryly. The Pyros have rejected all previous attempts at alliance. They consider themselves superior to solid beings, and rarely deign to communicate with non-plasma lifeforms. True, Ben acknowledged, but they've also never faced extinction before. Crisis changes perspective, as your presence here demonstrates, High Commander. Before Taylera could respond, alarms sounded throughout the command center. Crystalline officers moved with geometric precision to their stations as holographic displays shifted to show the anomaly's edge pulsing ominously. Void fluctuation detected, a Crystalline officer reported. Pattern matches previous entity emergence. Estimated manifestation in 30 seconds. Defensive positions, Taylera commanded. Her form hardening visibly as crystalline armor extended across her surface. Ambassador Tennyson, perhaps your transformative abilities might prove useful against this manifestation. Ben activated the Omnitrix, scrolling quickly through available aliens. I'll need something that can affect multidimensional beings. Feedback might work. He can absorb and redirect energy. As the green light of transformation enveloped him, Ben's form shifted into the black and white plugged alien with a single central eye. Conductive coils extended from his head and limbs, crackling with electrical potential. Feedback, he announced. The transformation complete. Everyone stay back. If this entity feeds on energy like we suspect, I might be able to disrupt it. The command center's crystalline W. All suddenly darkened as something pressed against reality from the other side. The air itself seemed to bend inward, creating a spherical distortion that grew larger by the second. Containment fields at maximum, a Christen officer reported as shimmering barriers materialized around the distortion. Ineffective, Nixaria stated, her form analyzing the phenomenon. The entity exists partially T-side conventional dimensional parameters. Standard energy barriers cannot contain it. The distortion expanded suddenly, shattering the containment field with a sound like breaking glass. From within emerged a being that seemed to be composed of inverted crystal, its geometric structure following impossible patterns that hurt the eyes to observe directly. Unlike the recordings they'd seen earlier, this manifestation appeared larger and more complex, with multiple limbs extending in directions that seemed to contradict normal spatial relationships. Defensive Formation Triad 7, Taylera commanded, and her crystalline guards arranged themselves in a perfect geometric pattern, energy weapons materializing from their limbs. Wait, Ben called. Conventional weapons won't work. Let me try something else. As feedback, Ben could sense the strange energy patterns emanating from the entity, not electricity or radiation, but something more fundamental, as though reality itself was being converted to energy at the quantum level. He extended his conductive coils toward the manifestation, attempting to establish a connection. The effect was immediate and unexpected. Rather than absorbing the entity's energy as intended, Ben felt a powerful pulling sensation, as though the creature were attempting to drain him instead. It's trying to absorb my energy, he shouted, struggling to break the connection. This transformation isn't going to work. With considerable effort, Ben managed to sever the energy link and stumbled backward. The entity advanced inexorably toward the assembled leaders, its impossible geometry shifting constantly as it moved. Ambassador, Xylora called urgently, try a non-energy-based form. Ben nodded, quickly selecting a new transformation. In a flash of green light, feedback disappeared, replaced by a small, frog-like alien with large, bulbous green eyes. Gray matter, Ben announced. Let me analyze this thing properly. From gray matter's hyper-intelligent perspective, patterns immediately became visible that had previously been obscured. The entity wasn't simply absorbing energy, it was converting matter into something else entirely, a street. 8 that existed between conventional dimensions. It's a converter, gray matter announced in his high-pitched voice. Not destroying reality but transforming it into void-compatible state. High Commander, your crystalline structure can temporarily disrupt its conversion process. Without hesitation, Taylera stepped forward, her body reconfiguring into a perfect geometric formation that somehow mirrored the entity's impossible patterns, but inverted. When she spoke, her voice resonated at frequencies that made the very air vibrate. By authority of the Chrisan Empire, I command you to cease conversion operations in this dimension. She declared, her crystalline form pulsing with internally generated energy. The entity paused, its structure seeming to recalculate in response to Taylera's presence. Then, unexpectedly, it emitted a sound, not speech, but a harmonic pattern that rattled every crystalline surface in the chamber. It's communicating, gray matter realized. Empress Nixaria, can your multidimensional perception translate? The quantum nexus Empress's form shifted rapidly through multiple states as she analyzed the harmonic pattern. Partial translation possible, she announced after a moment. The entity identifies itself as a scout converter of the Void Collective. It states its purpose is preparation for grand unification of all divisible reality. Ask why it targets our specific worlds. Xylora suggested. Nixaria emitted a complex series of harmonic frequencies. The entity responded with another pattern, more complex than before. Translation. Your woe. RLDS exist at dimensional intersection points. Conversion of intersection nodes creates exponential expansion effect across multiple realities simultaneously. Efficiency dictates targeting nexus points rather than standard reality nodes. We're not just random targets, Ben realized, his gray matter intellect processing implications rapidly. Our 5 worlds exist at points where multiple dimensions intersect naturally. By converting these specific locations, the Void Collective can affect numerous realities at once. Can we communicate our desire for peaceful coexistence? Maria asked. Multiple voices unusually synchronized in their concern. Nixaria transmitted the question. The entity's response came immediately, a harsh, discordant pattern that caused several crystalline surfaces to crack. Translation. Coexistence contradicts fundamental purpose. Division is inefficiency. All separated consciousness must return to unified void state. Resistance is. Nixaria paused, seeming to struggle with the concept. The closest approximation in our language would be mathematically irrelevant. It doesn't consider our existence valuable or our resistance meaningful, Ben translated grimly. We're simply an inefficiency to be corrected. The entity suddenly expanded, its impossible geometry stretching toward them with accelerating speed. Taylera moved to intercept, her CR. Eastaline form hardening into defensive configuration, but the entity simply flowed around her like water around stone, continuing its advance toward the other leaders. Change again, Ambassador. Xylora called urgently. Ben quickly selected another transformation, shifting from gray matter to a massive, rock-like alien with molten core visible through cracks in his surface. Gravitac, he announced, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. Extending his hands toward the advancing entity, Ben exerted his gravitational powers, not attempting to destroy the creature but to create a localized gravity well that contained its expansion. The entity struggled against the gravitational force, its impossible geometry distorting further as it fought to maintain coherence. I can't hold it forever, Ben warned, the strain evident in his voice. We need a more permanent solution. I may have one, Sovereign Maria announced, flowing forward. Her liquid body began emitting bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in complex sequences. Our collective consciousness can establish temporary neural interference patterns, similar to how we regulate disconnected thought streams within our own network. Without waiting for approval, Maria extended liquid tendrils toward the contained entity. Where they made contact, the creature's geometry seemed to stabilize, becoming temporarily more coherent and less aggressive. It's working, Ben observed. You're forcing it to maintain consistent dimensional parameters. The effect is temporary, Maria warned, her voice is showing signs of strain. I cannot maintain neural suppression indefinitely against a consciousness so fundamentally different from our own. We don't need indefinite, Ben decided. Just long enough to escape and reach the Pyro's dominion. Empress Nixaria, can your quantum technology transport us all directly to my ship? The multidimensional Empress calculated briefly. Probability of successful mass quantum teleportation, 67%. Acceptable under current circumstances. Do it, Ben commanded. Maria, maintain suppression until the last possible moment. Empress Nixaria's form expanded, enveloping the assembled leaders in a field of quantum uncertainty. The world around them seemed to flicker between multiple possible states simultaneously, existing and not existing in the same moment. Quantum translation initiating, Nixaria announced, her voice echoing strangely as though coming from multiple timelines at once. Destination: Earth Vessel Rustbucket 3. The crystalline command center dissolved around them, replaced by a disorienting kaleidoscope of potential realities, glimpses of what might have been or could yet be. Ben caught fragmented images, the 5 worlds intact and thriving. The same worlds completely consumed by void, alternate versions of themselves fighting different manifestations of the same threat. Reality reasserted itself abruptly as they materialized within the Rustbucket III's main cabin. Sovereign Maria collapsed immediately, her liquid form losing coherence momentarily before stabilizing. I could maintain suppression only until quantum translation began. She explained weakly. The entity is free now. And likely very unhappy about our departure, Ben added, reverting to human form. Computer, initiate emergency launch sequence. Maximum thrust as soon as we clear atmosphere. The ship's systems responded instantly, engines powering up as artificial gravity generators compensated for the sudden acceleration. Through the viewports, they could see the crystalline spires of the Chrysson capital receding rapidly as the Rustbucket 3 shot skyward. Vessel approaching escape velocity, the computer announced. Detecting Unasu. AL energy signature pursuing on intercept course. On screen, Ben commanded. The main display showed their pursuer. The entity had abandoned its crystalline disguise and now appeared as a tear in reality itself. A perfect absence surrounded by crackling energy as it accelerated toward them. It moves between dimensions, Nixaria observed, her form analyzing the phenomenon. Conventional space is no barrier to its travel. Then we need unconventional defense, Ben decided, activating the Omnitrix again. If I transform into Alien X, I might be able to. Unadvisable, Nixaria interrupted urgently. Celestial Sapian reality manipulation would create dimensional resonance patterns the Void Collective could exploit to expand conversion exponentially. Probability of accelerating the very process we seek to prevent, 93%. Ben hesitated, hand poised above the Omnitrix. You're certain? Our quantum calculations are unequivocal, Nixaria confirmed. Reality manipulati. On powers will destabilize dimensional boundaries further. Then we run, Ben decided, turning back to the controls. Computer, prepare for immediate hyperspace jump. Direct course to the Pyro's dominion. Warning. Hyperspace calculations incomplete. Jumping with partial coordinates risks navigational failure. We have no choice, Ben insisted. Execute jump now. The stars outside elongated, as the Rustbucket 3 leapt into hyperspace, the pursuing void entity disappearing from their sensors. For a moment, tense silence filled the cabin as each leader processed what they had witnessed and narrowly escaped. That was a scout, Taylera stated flatly, breaking the silence. And we barely survived the encounter. If the scouts are this powerful, Xylora added, what might the main force be capable of? Ben met the gaze of each sovereign in turn, seeing the same realization in their expressions despite their vastly different physiologies. They faced an enemy unlike any their civilizations had encountered before, one that didn't merely threaten their people but the very concept of their existence. We need the Pyro's dominion, he said firmly. Without Grand Archancora and her people's energy manipulation abilities, we can't implement the resonance barrier Empress Nixaria proposed. The Fire Dwellers are notoriously isolationist, Taylor reminded him. Even more so than my own people. They have rejected 17 previous alliance proposals from the Oceanic Collective, Maria confirmed, her multiple voices conveying concern. They will join us, Ben said with quiet confidence. Because they must. Just as you all have set aside millennia of isolation to stand together now. The Rust Bucket 3 hurtled through hyperspace toward the Pyro's dominion, carrying with it perhaps the last hope for 5 civilizations and countless others that would fall if the Void Collective succeeded in its grand unification. As the ship's systems calculated their arrival time, Ben studied the faces of the 4 sovereign leaders who had placed their trust in him and in each other despite ancient differences and cultural barriers. Whatever awaited them at the Pyro's dominion, whether diplomatic challenge or void manifestation, they would face it as a unified council. A council of queens, forged in crisis, standing against the unmaking of all they knew. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Hearts of Fire. The Rust Bucket 3 hurtled through hyperspace, its reinforced hull vibrating under the strain of prolonged maximum velocity. Inside, an unprecedented gathering of sovereign led. Maintained uneasy silence as the ship's navigation system counted down to their arrival at the Pyro's dominion. Ben studied the faces of his companions, each as different from human as they were from each other. Queen Xylora stood near the viewport, her wooden features contemplative as luminescent blossoms in her vine hair pulsed with what Ben had learned to recognize as concern. High Commander, Taylora had positioned herself with geometric precision in the exact center of the command deck, her crystalline form occasionally emitting harmonic tones as she processed tactical scenarios. Sovere, GN Maria flowed in constant motion around the perimeter, her liquid body rippling with information patterns shared between her individual consciousness and her distant collective. And Empress Nixaria, shifted between multiple states simultaneously, her form occasionally splitting into overlapping probability versions before reconsolidating. 4 queens, 4 civilizations, 4 fundamentally errant approaches to existence, now united by a common threat. Approaching Pyro's dominion, the ship's AI announced. Transition from hyperspace in 30 seconds. Ben moved to the pilot's station, checking the special shielding systems. Computer, activate Class 10 thermal dampening fields and solar radiation barriers. Configure atmospheric systems for compatibility with plasma-based lifeforms. You've encountered the Fire Dwellers before, Taylora inquired, her crystalline voice precisely modulated. Once, Ben confirmed, the memory bringing a slight smile. 5 years ago, during what they called the Cold Star Crisis. Their primary sun was experiencing unusual cooling that threatened their civilization. I helped stabilize the stellar core using a combination of NRG and atomics forms. Yet they maintain no formal diplomatic ties with Earth, Xylora observed, moving beside him as the countdown continued. The Pyros consider most solid beings too. Ben searched for the diplomatic term. Ephemeral for meaningful alliance. They measure time in stellar cycles rather than planetary rotations. To them, most of our civilizations appear to barely exist before vanishing. Our perspective is not without mathematical basis, Nixaria noted, briefly coalescing into her most solid form. The average Pyro's lifespan equals approximately 4,327 Earth years, with some individuals persisting through multiple stellar evolutionary phases. I have attempted communication 17 times over 9 generations, Maria added, her multiple voices harmonizing with subtle sadness. Each attempt met with the same response. When your waters have flowed for 1,000 years more, perhaps we might speak of matters that endure. Condescending plasma balls, Taylora muttered, harmonic undertones revealing her disdain more clearly than her words. Maybe, Ben acknowledged, but we need them. According to Empress Nixaria's calculations, the resonance barrier requires energy. Signatures from all 5 affected civilizations. Without the Pyros, we can't implement an effective defense. Exiting hyperspace in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The swirling tunnel of hyperspace collapsed around them, replaced by a view that drew gasps from even these well-traveled sovereigns. Before them hung not a conventional planet but a binary star system, twin suns orbiting each other in perfect gravitational balance. The larger primary star burned brilliant gold with coronas of superheated plasma extending millions of kilometers into space. Its smaller companion glowed deep crimson, its surface churning with magnetic storms that created spectacular auroral displays where the star's magnetic fields intersected. The dual hearts of the Pyro's dominion, Ben explained, GU. Eyeing the ship toward the golden primary. Most of their civilization inhabits the coronosphere of the larger sun, with specialized research and cultural sites located in the companion star. Fascinating, Xylora breathed, her botanical features illuminated by the stellar light. A civilization not merely surviving but thriving within stellar fire itself. Incoming transmission, the AI announced. Origin. Pyro's Dominion exterior defense perimeter. On screen, Ben commanded. The main display activated to show what appeared to be a living flame shaped vaguely like a humanoid torso and head, with tendrils of plasma extending where arms might be on a solid being. When it spoke, its voice crackled and popped like a bonfire, words forming between surges of energy. Solid vessel approaching Pyro's space. The being addressed them. State your identity and purpose immediately. Unauthorized approach will result in solar flare redirection to your current coordinates. This is Ambassador Ben Tennyson of Earth. Ben responded formally. I request immediate audience with Grand Arch and Korra regarding the dimensional anomalies currently threatening the 5 sovereign systems. The Plos. Ma being's form flickered with what might have been surprise. Tennyson. The one who carries many forms. Its fiery features shifted into what Ben recognized as the Pyro's equivalent of a frown. Your presence is unexpected. Solid beings rarely approach the Dominion directly. The situation is unprecedented, Ben replied. I bring with me Queen Xylora of Floritopia, High Commander Taylera of the Chrysan Empire, Sovereign Maria of the Oceanic Collective, and Empress Nixaria of the Quantum Nexus. We come seeking alliance against a common threat. The guard's plasma form flared dramatically. The 5 sovereigns together. This violates 17 different non-interference protocols. Perhaps you might inform the Grand Archon that existence itself faces unmaking, Taylera interjected, her crystalline patience clearly wearing thin. Protocols become irrelevant when reality itself dissolves. The guard appeared momentarily flustered, plasma tendrils whipping in agitated patterns. Remain in your current position. Do not approach further until authorized. The transmission cut abruptly. Charming reception, Taylera observed dryly. Their caution is understandable, Ben said. The Eros haven't faced external threats in thousands of years. Their stellar environment naturally deters most potential adversaries. Yet the void entities target them most aggressively, Xylora noted. According to Empress Nixaria's data, the dimensional disruption here exceeds all others. Probability analysis indicates the Pyro's Dominion represents the primary conversion target, Nixaria confirmed. Her form shifting through calculations. Their stellar energy output provides optimal conversion efficiency for the Void Collective's purposes. Meaning they need our help whether they admit it or not, Ben concluded. They waited in tense silence for several minutes before the communications system activated again. This time, the being that appeared on screen radiated power in a literal sense. Its plasma form several times larger than the guards, burning with intense blue-white fire that suggested temperatures far beyond normal stellar conditions. Elaborate patterns of magnetic energy flowed across its surface like living circuitry, occasionally forming symbols that shifted too quickly for non-pyros to interpret. Ambassador Tennyson, the being addressed him, its voice a control lead inferno that nonetheless conveyed clear authority. I am Grand Archon Korra of the Eternal Flame. Reports indicate you approach with leaders of 4 solid civilizations, claiming alliance against some cosmic threat. Her tone conveyed clear skepticism. Such cooperation between your inherently divisive societies seems improbable. Ben straightened, meeting the plasma sovereign's fiery gaze directly. Grand Archon, the threat we face transcends our differences. Dimensional anomalies have appeared simultaneously on all 5 of our worlds, yours included. These anomalies consume reality itself, converting our universe into something the entities call void state. Korra's plasma form flared with what might have been amusement. The Pyro's Dominion has existed within stellar fire for 8 million cycles, Ambassador. We have witnessed supernovae and survived stellar evolution. What threat could possibly require alliance with? Her gaze swept dismissively across the other sovereigns, temporary beings. Ben felt tension ripple through his companions at the insult, but pressed on diplomatically. Grand Archon, we have encountered entities emerging from these anomalies, Scouts 4. Something they call the Void Collective. They specifically target the dimensional intersection points where our 5 civilizations exist. Empress Nixaria's calculations indicate your world faces the most severe manifestation, with complete stellar conversion possible within hours. Cora's plasma form rippled with subtle patterns Ben couldn't interpret. After a moment's consideration, she spoke again. Your concern is noted, Ambassador. However, our sensors detect no significant threat to stellar integrity. Perhaps solid beings perceive danger where none exists for us. Grand Archon, Nixaria interjected, her multidimensional form shifting to its most authoritative configuration. Our quantum probability matrices indicate 97% certainty of catastrophic stellar collapse within 8.3 hours if the dimensional breach in your coronosphere remains unaddressed. The void entities consume energy regardless of its form, plasma, matter, or quantum potential. For the first time, Cora's dismissive demeanor faltered slightly. You claim these entities can affect stellar matter directly. We have witnessed them consuming crystalline structures, botanical life, liquid consciousness, and quantum states. Ben confirmed gravely. They adapt to match whatever civilization they target, then convert that reality to void state. Nothing we've encountered can stop them You ally. But Empress Nixaria has developed a theoretical defense requiring energy signatures from all 5 of our worlds. Cora seemed to consider this information, her plasma form pulsing thoughtfully. These are significant claims, Ambassador. The Pyros do not typically concern ourselves with external affairs, but stellar integrity represents our highest priority. Her fiery gaze intensified. I'll permit your vessel to approach our outer coronosphere for preliminary scans. If your claims prove accurate, further discussion may be warranted. The transmission ended, leaving the assembled Iranes exchanging glances of cautious optimism. Not exactly an enthusiastic welcome, Ben observed, but better than outright rejection. The Fire Dweller's arrogance remains intact despite potential extinction, Taylor noted. Harmonic undertones suggesting continued disapproval. Perhaps understandably, Xylora countered diplomatically. Their civilization has endured far longer than any of ours. Like ancient sequoias, they have weathered countless storms that toppled younger growth. I sense fear beneath the flames, Maria added, her liquid form rippling thoughtfully. The Grand Archon's dismissal masks deeper concern. Her consciousness flows turbulently beneath projected certainty. An accurate assessment, Nixaria confirmed, her form briefly splitting into probability variants before reconverging. Micro-expressions in her plasma patterns indicated 78.4% probability of significant apprehension despite verbal confidence. Ben nodded, engaging the ship's engines. Let's provide the evidence she needs to justify alliance with temporary beings. He guided the Rust Bucket 3 carefully toward the massive star, activating additional layers of thermal shielding as they approached. Ambassador, Xylora said quietly, moving beside him at the controls. Navigating these diplomatic currents requires exceptional skill. Your ability to maintain composure despite Grand Archon's dismissive attitude demonstrates why Earth chose wisely in appointing you its representative. Ben smiled slightly. 5 years ago, I might have responded to her temporary beings comment with a transformation and challenge. Sometimes growth means knowing when to absorb an insult for the greater good. A lesson some of my elder growth might benefit from, Xylora replied, the flowers in her vine hair emitting a brief sweet fragrance that Ben had learned indicated amusement. As they approached the sun's outer atmosphere, the viewports automatically darkened to compensate for the increasing brilliance. Heat shield indicators flashed warning signals as external temperatures rose beyond normal operational parameters. Thermal dampening fields at maximum capacity, the computer announced. External temperature, 6 million degrees Kelvin and rising. Can your vessel withstand these conditions? Taylor inquired, her crystalline form shifting slightly to distribute internal heat more efficiently. The Rust Bucket 3 was designed for extreme environments, Ben assured her, but not for prolonged solar immersion. We'll need to dock with a Pyros facility once we're cleared to proceed further. The ship pushed deeper into the sun's outer atmosphere, where plasma currents flowed in vast rivers of fire. Through the viewports, they could see structures unlike any conventional architecture, formations of super-condensed plasma held in perfect magnetic containment, forming vast interconnected complexes that flowed and shifted with the stellar currents while maintaining their fundamental integrity. The coronosphere habitats, Ben explained, home to over 60 billion pyros. They shape the star's magnetic fields to create stable regions within the plasma itself. Magnificent, Xylora whispered, her botanical features illuminated by the stellar light. Life adapting not merely to survive but to harness the most extreme environment imaginable. Incoming transmission, the computer announced. The screen activated to show a different pyros official, this one burning with green-tinted flames that indicated specialized scientific caste in their society. Solid vessel, the official addressed them formally. Our preliminary scans confirm unusual quantum fluctuations in the stellar core. Grand Archon Cora has authorized your approach to primary res. Urge Nexus 7 for detailed investigation. Follow the beacon signature precisely. Deviation will result in immediate plasma immersion. A navigation point appeared on their sensors, indicating a path through the churning solar atmosphere toward what appeared to be a particularly large and complex plasma structure deeper within the star. Acknowledged, Ben responded, requesting compatibility. Protocols for docking with Pyro's facilities. The official transmitted a data packet containing specialized shield configurations. Implement these modifications immediately. Your solid vessel requires recalibration to withstand deeper coronosphere conditions. Ben transferred the data to the ship's computer, watching as the shield harmonics shifted to match Pyro's specifications. The hull vibrat ion decreased noticeably as the new configurations took effect. Fascinating adaptation, Nixaria observed, her form analyzing the shield modifications. The Pyros have developed harmonic resonance technology that allows solid matter to temporarily withstand plasma conditions by creating quantum entanglement with stellar magnetic fields, allowing visitors without requiring them to become plasma themselves, Ben noted. Practical hospitality, Pyros style. They navigated carefully along the designated path, pushing deeper into the sun's atmosphere. Outside, rivers of plasma flowed in hypno-tic patterns controlled by the Pyros, magnetic manipulation. Occasional flares of intensely bright light indicated what Ben recognized as Pyros citizens moving through their natural environment, each a distinct pattern of energy rather than a fixed form. As they approached the research facility, the true scale of Pyros architecture became apparent. The structure extended for thousands of kilometers in all directions. A perfect lattice of plasma containment fields and magnetic corridors that somehow maintained rigid geometric precision despite existing within the chaotic stellar environment. Primary Research Nexus 7, Ben announced as they neared the designated docking point. One of the oldest continuous research facilities in the galaxy. Some Pyros scientists have been conducting same experiments for thousands of years. Their perception of time differs fundamentally from ours, Xylora observed. What we might consider painfully slow progress, they see as appropriately measured consideration. Docking sequence initiated, the computer announced as magnetic tethers reached out from the facility to secure the Rustbucket 3. Establishing environmental compatibility shield, a shimmering field extended from the Pyro structure to envelop their ship, creating a transition zone where the superheated plasma of the solar atmosphere gradually cooled to temperatures wouldn't instantly vaporize solid matter. Through this containment field, they could see Pyro's officials gathering to meet them, each distinct in coloration and plasma pattern, indicating different roles in their highly specialized society. The transition shield will allow us to exit the vessel safely, Ben explained, but we'll still experience temperatures and radiation levels far beyond normal habitability. I recommend protective transformations for everyone. He activated the Omnitrix, selecting NRG, the armored radiation alien capable of withstanding stellar temperatures. In a flash of green light, his body transformed into the heavily armored form, voice deepening as he spoke through the suit's grill. This form can handle solar conditions without difficulty. Crystalline physiology requires minimal adaptation, Taylora stated, her crystalline body reconfiguring its molecular structure to increase heat resistance. Her normally transparent surface took on a reflective quality that deflected thermal radiation. The collective can maintain coherence through specialized membrane generation, Maria announced as her liquid body formed a shimmering protective layer that contained her consciousness while shielding it from external conditions. Quantum probability manipulation allows temporary stellar compatibility, Nixaria explained, her form shifting into a state that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, the most extreme temperatures simply passing through dimensions she temporarily didn't occupy. Queen Xylora alone seemed concerned. Unfortunately, botanical physiology offers few natural defenses against stellar conditions. Perhaps I can assist, Ben offered, transforming from NRG back to human form momentarily before selecting another alien. Swampfire should be able to extend heat-resistant spores that can temporarily protect plant-based life. The transformation complete, Ben's body reconstructed into the plant-like alien form. He extended his hands toward Xylora, releasing a cloud of specialized spores that settled over her wooden form, creating a protective barrier that immediately began regulating temperature. "Thank you, Ambassador," Xylora said, the flowers in her vine hair briefly emitting a fragrance that indicated gratitude. "Your transformative abilities continue to bridge biological incompatibilities that would otherwise divide us." The ship's airlock cycled open, revealing the transition corridor that would take them into the Pyro's facility. Even with their various protections, the heat that flooded in was intense. Like standing at the mouth of an active volcano. They moved quickly through the connection point into the research facility itself. Inside, the architecture defied conventional physics. Corridors formed from contained plasma flows extended in all directions, with intersections that somehow occupied the same space without mixing. Pyro's citizens moved through these passages as living flames, occasionally merging with the structural elements before separating again, the distinction between individual and environment far more fluid than in solid-based civilizations. "Welcome to Primary Research Nexus 7. Announced a Pyro's scientist whose plasma form burned with precise blue-white intensity. "I am Chief Researcher Flaricor. Grand Archon Cora has instructed me to evaluate your claims regarding dimensional anomalies before granting formal audience." "Thank you for receiving us, Chief Researcher," Ben replied diplomatically. "We've brought data from 4 affected worlds showing identical phenomena. The evidence strongly suggests coordinated attack rather than natural occurrence. Follow," Flaricor instructed, his plasma form flowing down a corridor of contained fire. "Our core monitoring station has detected unusual fluctuations, but nothing suggesting existential threat." They moved through a series of chambers where other Pyro's scientists conducted experiments manipulating plasma in ways that defied Ben's understanding, creating stable formations that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously or compressing stellar material to densities that should have triggered fusion reactions yet somehow remained stable. Finally, they reached what appeared to be the central monitoring station, a vast spherical chamber whose walls displayed real-time visualization of the star's interior. In the center of the room floated a perfect miniature representation of the binary star system, showing energy flows, magnetic field lines, and gravitational interactions in exquisite detail. "Our stellar modeling system," Flaricor explained with evident pride. "It maintains quantum entanglement with every cubic kilometer of both stars simultaneously, allowing perfect real-time monitoring." Ben and the Sovereigns gathered around the model, studying it carefully. The primary star appeared normal at first glance, vast plasma flows circulating in familiar patterns between core and surface. But as they looked closer, a subtle distortion became visible near the core, an area where the normal plasma flows simply stopped, as though running into an invisible barrier. "There," Ben said, pointing to the anomaly. "That disruption matches exactly the pattern we've observed on other worlds. The void is already forming within your star." Flaricor's plasma form flickered with evident concern. "Impossible. Our sensors would have detected any significant." "Your sensors detect only what exists within conventional dimensional parameters," Nixaria interrupted, her form shifting to interface directly with the model. "The void entities exist partially outside normal space-time. Observe." She manipulated the display to show quantum probability patterns rather than physical matter. Immediately, the anomaly became starkly visible, a perfect geometric absence expanding slowly but steadily from the star's core outward. "By the eternal flame," Flaricor whispered, his usual scientific detachment faltering. "The core resonance patterns are destabilizing. If this continues..." He didn't finish the sentence, but the implications were clear to everyone present. "How long until critical instability?" Ben asked. Flaricor performed rapid calculations, his plasma form fluctuating as he processed the data. At current expansion rate, core collapse will begin in approximately 7 hours. Total stellar failure within 9. The star would go supernova, Ben realized aloud. Worse, Flaricor corrected grimly. The dimensional properties of this anomaly suggest neither matter nor energy would remain. Not destruction, uncreation, as though the star never existed at all. Precisely what we've observed on our worlds, Xylora confirmed. Reality itself unmaking. Grand Archon must be informed immediately, Flaricor decided, his scientific caution evaporating in the face of unequivocal evidence. Before he could send the message, the entire facility shuddered violently. Alarms consisting of harmonized plasma frequencies echoed through the structure as the model in the center of the room showed a sudden acceleration in the anomaly's expansion rate. Something's happening at the core, Flaricor announced, his flame-like body intensifying with agitation. The stellar model showed the anomaly pulsing rhythmically, its perfect geometric edges fluctuating as though something were pressing against them from the other side. It's happening again, Ben warned, recognizing the pattern from previous manifestations. A void entity is about to emerge. Impossible, Flaricor insisted. Nothing could survive the stellar core's conditions. The pressure alone would. His statement cut off as the model showed a massive energy surge at the anomaly's boundary. The visualization briefly overloaded, going dark for several seconds before reactivating to show something new within the star's core, a presence that shouldn't have been possible. E-plasma should have flowed in continuous fusion reaction, a perfect sphere of nothingness now existed. At its edge, a figure was taking shape, not solid, not plasma, but something that mimicked stellar fire while fundamentally negating it. It appeared as an anti-flame, burning with darkness rather than light, consuming energy rather than releasing it. A scout converter, Ben identified grimly. Quote, like the ones we encountered on Floritopia and the Chrysan Empire, but adapted for stellar environments. It exists within our core. Flaricor's voice conveyed shock that transcended scientific curiosity. Nothing should survive those conditions. These entities aren't bound by conventional physics, Ben explained. They convert our reality to match their dimensional parameters rather than adapting to ours. The facility shuddered again, more violently this time. The model showed the entity moving outward from the core, leaving expanding nothingness in its wake. It's heading toward the magnetic control nexus. Flaricor realized with horror. If it disrupts our field generators, your entire civilization loses containment, Ben finished for him. The habitats would collapse. We must evacuate immediately, Taylora stated, her crystalline form vibrating with tactical assessment. Strategic withdrawal to regroup and... No, Ben interrupted firmly. Evacuating billions of pyros in hours isn't possible. We need to confront this entity directly and buy time for Empress Nyxaria to implement the resonance barrier. The barrier requires energy signatures from all 5 worlds, Nyxaria reminded him. Without pyro's participation, then we'll convince them by stopping this manifestation, Ben decided. He turned to Flaricor, his NRG form radiating determined intensity. Chief Researcher, we need to reach the core immediately. Can your transportation system get us there? Flaricor's plasma form flickered with hesitation. The core plasma corridors are restricted to ECI-leased research casts with appropriate adaptations. Your solid forms would not survive the transition. I don't need to stay solid, Ben replied confidently. The Omnitrix contains the genetic code for Pyro's transformation. Flaricor's flame brightened with surprise. You can assume our form. Temporarily, yes. Ben turned to the other sovereigns. I'll need to go alone. None of you can survive core conditions. Even with your adaptations. Ambassador, this is unacceptably dangerous, Xylora protested, concern evident in her wooden features. The entity has adapted specifically to Pyro's physiology. Even with transformation, you would face it in its chosen environment. She's right, Taylora added, strategic harmonics evident in her crystalline voice. Tactical assessment indic. Atesh minimal success probability in direct confrontation under these conditions. I must concur, Mireya's multiple voices joined the opposition. Our collective analysis suggests alternative approaches would yield higher survival rates. Probability of successful solo intervention. 23%, Nyxaria calculated grimly. Ben's determined expression didn't waver. Sometimes long odds are the only ones we get. Chief Researcher, prepare the transport system. I'm going to the core. Before further objections could be raised, the facility's entrance portal flared with intense light as a new presence arrived. Grand Archon Korra herself entered the chamber, her plasma form radiating such power that the other pyros immediately bowed in deference, their flames diminishing in her presence. So, she addressed the gathered sovereigns, her voice like controlled solar flares. The solid beings speak truth after all. Her fiery gaze fixed on the model showing the entity's progress through her star's core. Our sensors finally detected the anomaly when it expanded beyond quantum fluctuation thresholds. Grand Archon, Ben acknowledged with appropriate respect. The entity advances toward your magnetic control systems. I was preparing to intercept it directly using Pyro's transformation. Korra's plasma form flared with what might have been surprise or perhaps amusement. You would venture into our core, into conditions that would vaporize your solid form in microseconds, to confront an entity that threatens our civilization. I would, Ben confirmed without hesitation, and have done similar before. During the Cold Star Crisis, I stabilized your companion star's fusion reactions when they threatened to collapse. Korra studied him for a long moment, her plasma patterns shifting in complex evaluation. The persistent flame remembers, she acknowledged finally. You used a form of living energy then, one compatible with stellar conditions. And I can do so again, Ben assured her. But time is critical. Each moment allows the entity to expand its conversion effect further. The Grand Archon's form pulsed thoughtfully. Your courage honors the eternal flame, Ambassador. But you misunderstand Pyro's philosophy if you believe we would allow an outsider to defend our core while we merely observe. Her plasma body intensified dramatically. I will accompany you personally. Her declaration sent ripples of shock through the Pyro's scientists present. Flaricor in particular seemed alarmed. Grand Archon, protocol forbids your direct involvement in potentially destructive phenomena. The succession lines are irrelevant if our stars cease to exist, Korra interrupted with finality. Her attention returned to Ben. Assume your energy form, Ambassador. We depart immediately through the direct plasma conduits. Ben nodded, activating the Omnitrix once more. Instead of NRG, he selected a different transformation, one he rarely used due to its volatile nature. In a flash of emerald light, his body dissolved into pure energy, reconstituting as the nuclear alien Atomics. Atomics, he announced, his voice resonating with barely contained power. His form glowed with intense energy, hovering slightly above the floor as radiation leaked from seams in his armored body. Impressive adaptation, Korra acknowledged, her flame-like features suggesting something like approval. Follow precisely. The plasma corridors tolerate no deviation. She turned to the other sovereigns. Your majesties must remain here under protection of my scientists. The core environment would destroy your forms regardless of adaptation. Ambassador, Xylora said urgently, stepping forward despite the intense heat emanating from both plasma sovereign and nuclear alien. Exercise extreme caution. We've observed these entities absorbing the predominant energy forms of each world they invade. Probability calculations suggest the entity will attempt to assimilate your transformed energy signature. Nixaria added, recommend maintaining quantum uncertainty in your molecular configuration to resist conversion. I will monitor collective consciousness patterns for any intrusion attempts. Maria offered, her liquid form maintaining careful distance from Ben's radioactive body. And I will coordinate defensive crystallization patterns should you require emergency extraction, Taylera concluded. Her strategic mind already calculating contingencies. Ben nodded to each of them, touched by their concern despite the brief time they'd spent as allies. Monitor the situation from here. If we fail to contain the entity. He paused, considering the implications. Implement evacuation protocols for your worlds immediately. Without waiting for response, he turned to follow Grand Archon Korra, who had already opened a portal of pure plasma leading directly into the star's interior. She entered first, her form briefly flaring with intense light as she transitioned from the relatively cool research facility into the superheated plasma corridor beyond. Ben followed immediately, his atomics form capable of withstanding the extreme conditions. The moment he entered the plasma corridor, his senses expanded dramatically. Within this environment of pure energy, he could perceive patterns invisible to conventional vision, magnetic field lines forming complex three-dimensional structures, fusion reactions cascading in brilliant chains, and the subtle quantum fluctuations that maintained the star's delicate balance. Cora moved ahead of him with the grace of one born to this environment, her plasma form accelerating to velocities that would have been impossible in conventional space. Ben pushed his atomics form to match her pace, nuclear energy pulsing through his transformed body. The core lies 17,000 kilometers ahead, Cora explained as they traveled, her voice somehow carrying through the plasma medium despite the absence of air. We will encounter increasing density and pressure gradients. Can your form withstand 26 million degrees and 300 billion atmospheres of pressure? Atomics is designed for nuclear containment, Ben assured her. Though privately he wondered about the transformation's limits. He'd never tested it under such extreme conditions. What's the plan when we reach the entity? Pyro's MBAT techniques rely on magnetic field manipulation, Cora explained, her form navigating through a particularly turbulent region of plasma flow. We can generate containment fields that might temporarily isolate the entity from surrounding stellar material, preventing further conversion. And then, Cora's plasma form flickered with what might have been grim determination. Then we discover whether void can burn. They continued deeper into the star, the conditions growing increasingly extreme with each passing kilometer. Ben's atomics form began to feel the strain, his energy containment systems working at maximum capacity to maintain integrity against the crushing pressure and unimaginable heat. Ahead, the normal golden luminosity of the stellar plasma began to fade, giving way to an unnatural darkness that had no place in a star's core. They had reached the edge of the anomaly, the boundary where normal physics surrendered to void. Prepare yourself, Ambassador, Cora warned, her plasma form intensifying in preparation for battle. We approach the conversion zone. They slowed their approach, observing the phenomenon from what Cora deemed a safe distance, though, safety, a relative concept in the heart of a star facing existential threat. The void expanded in perfect geometric progression, its edge a sharp boundary between existence and nothingness. Near that boundary, the entity moved with methodical precision, a being that appeared as negative flame, burning darkness rather than light, absorbing the star's energy rather than emitting it. It consumes stellar matter and converts it directly to void state, Cora observed, her voice carrying tones Ben hadn't heard before, concern bordering on fear. No Pyros has ever witnessed such a phenomenon. The scout converter entities adapt to match each world they infiltrate, Ben explained, maintaining careful distance from the boundary. This one has configured itself specifically to process stellar plasma, as if sensing their presence. The entity paused in its methodical consumption. It turned, or seemed to turn, its form lacking clear directionality, toward them. For a moment, it simply observed, its anti-flame body pulsing with dark energy. Then it spoke, not in words, but in modulated energy patterns that somehow translated into concepts in Ben's mind. Solid becoming energy to resist unification. Interesting adaptation. Inefficient. All returns to void regardless of temporary configuration. It's communicating, Ben realized aloud. More like calculating, Cora corrected, her plasma form shifting into what Ben recognized as a defensive posture. It analyzes our resistance potential before continuing conversion. Ben decided to attempt dialogue before combat became inevitable. Quote, "We don't seek conflict with the Void Collective," he projected toward the entity. "But we cannot allow you to convert our reality against our will. Coexistence is possible between different dimensional states." The entity pulsed with what might have been amusement, or perhaps merely energy reconfiguration. Coexistence is division. Division is inefficiency. All separated consciousness represents energy potential wasted. Return to unified void state represents optimal configuration. That's not your decision to make for our civilizations, Ben countered. Each world, each species has the right to determine its own existence. Irrelevant concept. Separation itself is temporary error state. Correction proceeds regardless of error state preference. Without warning, the entity suddenly accelerated toward them, crossing the intervening space with impossible speed. Its anti-flame body expanded dramatically, tendrils of void energy reaching out to envelop them. Containment formation. Korra commanded, her plasma form instantly generating complex magnetic field patterns that formed a barrier between them and the advancing entity. Ben channeled his nuclear energy to reinforce her efforts. Ha-mi-na, ha-mi-na, ha-mi-na. He chanted, the ritual words focusing his atomic's powers to generate a spherical energy field that merged with Korra's magnetic containment. The entity collided with their combined barrier, void energy splashing against the containment field like negative water. For a moment, the defense held, energy and magnetism working in harmony to repel the unnatural force. Then the entity changed tactics. Instead of attempting to breach the barrier directly, it began circling their position, extending tendrils of void that probed for weaknesses while simultaneous. Continuing its consumption of the surrounding stellar material. It's cutting us off, Korra realized, her flame-like features sharpening with tactical assessment. Creating a perimeter of void around our position. We need to break through immediately, Ben decided. Before it completes the encirclement. Agreed. On my mark, channel maximum energy through magnetic corridor Beta 9. Korra's plasma form reconfigured, generating a complex magnetic field structure that formed a tunnel through the encroaching void. Now, Ben focused his nuclear power, channeling it precisely as directed. Nuclear fusion blast. The concentrated energy surged forward through Korra's magnetic tunnel, creating a temporary path through the entity's encirclement. Move, Korra commanded, her form already accelerating through the opening. Ben followed immediately, his atomic's form pushing to maximum velocity. They broke through the perimeter just as it collapsed behind them, void energy rushing to fill the temporary gap. The entity's conversion rate is accelerating, Korra observed, her voice carrying newfound urgency. It learns from each interaction, adapting its approach to counter our defenses. We can't defeat it through direct confrontation, Ben realized. We need to implement Empress Nixaria's resonance barrier immediately. This resonance barrier, explain it quickly, Korra demanded. As they maintained distance from the pursuing entity. It creates a multiphasic energy field calibrated to the specific dimensional frequency of our reality, Ben explained rapidly. By incorporating energy signatures from all 5 affected worlds, it generates a barrier the void entities cannot convert or penetrate. And you require Pyro's participation to implement this defense. Precisely. Each civilization contributes an energy pattern unique to their world. When synchronized properly, they create a resonance the void collective cannot overcome. Korra's plasma form pulsed with rapid calculation. Return to the research facility. I will delay the entity while you prepare this barrier. With respect, Grand Archon, that's suicide, Ben objected. This entity was specifically designed to consume stellar energy. You can't face it alone. I am Pyro's, Korra replied with fierce pride, her flame intensifying. Our civilization was born in stellar fire and has survived condition. Your solid worlds would consider apocalyptic. Go, Ambassador. I will demonstrate why the Void Collective should have chosen easier prey. Before Ben could protest further, Korra accelerated directly toward the pursuing entity. Her plasma form reconfiguring into what appeared to be an offensive configuration, concentrated energy focused to pinpoint precision. She collided with the entity in a spectacular release of power. Solar plasma erupting in all directions as positive and negative energy interacted explosively. The force of the blast pushed Ben back despite his atomic's form's substantial resistance. When the disruption cleared, he saw Korra engaged in direct combat with the entity, her plasma form weaving complex patterns around the void creature, generating localized magnetic singular entities that temporarily disrupted its conversion process. She fought with the skill of one who had centuries to perfect her abilities, each movement precisely calculated to maximize effect while minimizing exposure. Yet even with her extraordinary skill, Ben could see she was gradually losing ground. Each time she disrupted the entity's form, it reconstituted more quickly, learning from the encounter and adapting its defense. Grand Archon, he called, you can't win this fight alone. I don't intend to win, Ambassador, she responded, her voice strained with effort. Only to delay. Now go. Unless your offer of alliance was merely empty words from a temporary being. The challenge in her tone was unmistakable. Ben hesitated only a moment before making his decision. Computer, he activated his communicator link to the Rustbucket 3. Emergency Protocol Resonance Shield. Transmit activation codes to all sovereigns immediately. Transmission sent. the AI confirmed in his ear. Press Nixaria acknowledges and is preparing the quantum matrix. Tell them to begin preliminary calibrations, Ben instructed. I'm bringing the final signature directly. With that decided, he turned back toward the battle, channeling his nuclear energy into offensive configuration. Grand Archon, magnetic corridor on my position. Korra, still engaged with the entity, managed to generate a PA-TH of stabilized plasma between her location and Ben's. Without hesitation, he accelerated along this path, building nuclear energy to maximum levels as he approached. Fusion Cuisine. Ben shouted his attack name as he slammed directly into the entity, releasing concentrated nuclear force at the moment of impact. The resulting explosion temporarily disrupted the void creature's form, creating an opportunity Korra immediately exploited. Ambassador, she called, generating a complex magnetic field pattern between them. Channel your energy through this formation, precisely as I demonstrate. Understanding instantly, Ben aligned his nuclear output to match her plasma frequency. Their energies synchronized, creating a harmonic resonance that seemed to particularly distress the void entity. Where their combined power touched its negative flame, the entity's conversion process temporarily reversed, void returning to normal stellar matter for brief moments before being reclaimed. It works, Ben realized. The harmonized energy disrupts its conversion capability. Temporarily, Korra cautioned, maintaining the complex field pattern despite visible strain. But the effect diminishes with each application. It adapts quickly. Quote, the entity recovered from their attack, its negative flame spreading wider as it prepared a counter-offensive. Tendrils of void extended in all directions, attempting to encircle them once more. We need to break for the surface, Ben decided. This confirms Nixaria's theory. Properly harmonized energy can disrupt the conversion process. Agreed, Korra conceded, her pragmatic assessment overriding her initial pride. Disengage on my mark and follow precisely. 3, 2, 1. Now, they separated simultaneously, each taking a different plasma corridor away from the entity. The void creature hesitated momentarily, then chose to pursue Korra, perhaps recognizing her as the native energy form and therefore priority target. Ben immediately altered course to intercept, his atomics form pushing beyond safe energy containment levels. Ha-amina ha-amina ha-amina, he chanted, focusing his power into a concentrated beam that struck the entity from behind, disrupting its pursuit. The emergency plasma conduit, Korra called, changing direction toward what appeared to be a particularly intense flow of stellar material. It leads directly to the surface. They accelerated into the conduit, riding the superheated plasma current upward through the star's layers. Behind them, the void entity followed, its movement somewhat impeded by the natural plasma flow but still maintaining pursuit. It's not just following, Ben observed as they ascended. It's expanding its conversion effect through the conduit itself. He was right. Behind the entity, the plasma conduit was gradually transforming to void state, the nothingness spreading like infection through the star's circulatory system. If it reaches the surface through this channel, Korra realized grimly, it will emerge directly at our primary magnetic control facility. Can we divert to another exit point? Negative. All conduits connect to vital systems. There is no safe emergence point. They continued their desperate ascent, the void entity maintaining steady pursuit despite their head start. As they approached the star's upper convection zone, Ben could sense his atomics form beginning to destabilize, the transformation reaching its time limit after such intensive energy expenditure. Grand Archon, he warned, my transformation is becoming unstable. I can't maintain this form much longer. Korra's plasma body pulsed with rapid calculation. We're approaching the chromosphere. Your vessel should be capable of atmosphere retrieval if you signal now. Ben activated his emergency beacon, sending coordinates to the Rust Bucket 3. Extraction requested at emergence coordinates. Prepare for immediate retrieval of 2 signatures. Ambassador, Korra's Voic, carried an unusual tone, something Ben couldn't quite identify in her plasma patterns. You fought well. Few solid beings would have ventured into a stellar core to confront such an entity. Fewer still would have survived the encounter. Was that a compliment from the Grand Archon of the Pyro's dominion? Ben asked, managing humor despite their dire circumstances. A factual observation, Korra replied. though her plasma form flickered with what might have been amusement. Perhaps I have underestimated the capacity of temporary beings to demonstrate endurance. They burst from the STAR's surface in a spectacular eruption of solar material, emerging into the relatively cooler environment of the chromosphere. Almost immediately, Ben's communicator indicated the Rust Bucket 3 was approaching their position. Thermal shields at maximum. There. Ben pointed toward the approaching vessel. We need to reach it before. His words cut off as the Omnitrix suddenly began flashing warning signals. His atomics form flickered, nuclear containment becoming critically unstable. Ambassador. Cora called in alarm. The transformation is timing out. Ben shouted as his body began reverting to human form. I can't. Green light enveloped him as the Omnitrix forced reversion. In the stellar chromosphere, his human body would last mere microseconds before vaporizing completely. But before that could happen, Cora moved with astonishing speed. Her plasma form enveloped Ben entirely, creating a protective cocoon of precisely controlled energy that shielded him from the stellar environment without burning him to ash. Remain still. Her voice came from all around him, her consciousness somehow communicated directly through the plasma. I can maintain this protection briefly, but your biology is challenging to accommodate. Ben found himself suspended within living fire that somehow didn't consume him, a peculiar sensation unlike anything he'd experienced before. Through the translucent plasma, he could see the Rust Bucket 3 approaching rapidly, thermal shields glowing white-hot from the stellar radiation. The ship's almost here, he said, his voice sounding strange. Even to his own ears as it traveled through plasma rather than air. Can you get us there? Yes, but we have another problem. Cora's plasma form shifted slightly, allowing Ben to see behind them. The void entity had emerged from the star's surface, its negative flame now massive and still growing as it consumed solar material at accelerating rates. Worse, it had begun to split, dividing into multiple smaller entities that spread across the star's surface like ink drops in water. It's replicating, Ben realized with horror. Creating multiple conversion points simultaneously. The process has advanced beyond containment. Cora confirmed, her voice grim as she propelled them toward the approaching ship. Your resonance barrier is now our only option. The Rust Bucket 3 extended specialized thermal shields as they approached, creating a protected corridor for their entry. Cora flowed through this passage, carrying Ben safely into the ship's airlock, which sealed immediately behind them. Atmosphere restoration in progress, the computer announced as the chamber flooded with breathable air and temperature normalized. Cora carefully withdrew her plasma form from around Ben, reconstituting as a humanoid flame beside him. Your biology is remarkably resilient, Ambassador. Few solid beings would have survived such prolonged plasma immersion, even with protection. Ben took a grateful breath of cool air, his body temperature gradually returning to normal. Thank you for saving my life, Grand Archon. Consider it acknowledgement of our alliance, she replied, her flame-like features forming what might have been a smile. Now, let us join the others and implement this resonance barrier before my star becomes entirely void. They proceeded from the airlock to the main cabin, where they found the other sovereigns engaged in intense preparation. Empress Nyxaria had configured the ship's systems to generate a complex quantum matrix that hovered in the center of the room. Queen Xylora and Sovereign Maria were feeding biological and liquid consciousness patterns into this matrix, while High Commander Taylera contributed crystalline resonance frequencies. Ambassador, Xylora called, genuine relief evident in her wooden features as the flowers in her vine hair brightened visibly. We feared the worst when your life signs became erratic. The Grand Archon's intervention proved timely. Ben explained, nodding respectfully toward Cora. But the situation has deteriorated significantly. The void entity is replicating across the star's surface. We observed the process through ship sensors. Taylera confirmed, her crystalline voice precisely modulated despite the crisis. Conversion rate has increased by approximately 327% in the last 17 minutes. I have established partial consciousness linkage with the quantum matrix, Maria added, her liquid form pulsing with information patterns. The resonance barrier requires only stellar energy integration to achieve activation potential. All eyes turned to Grand Archon Cora, whose plasma form hovered contemplatively beside the quantum matrix. Your proposed defense, she addressed Empress Nyxaria directly. Requires energy contribution from my civilization. What exactly does this entail? A specific harmonic frequency unique to Pyro's plasma, Nyxaria explained, her multidimensional form shifting to its most didactic configuration. When synchronized with the other 4 energy signatures, it creates a dimensional resonance that reinforces our reality against void conversion. Essentially, Ben added, it makes our universe real enough that the void entities can't convert it to their state. Korra's plasma form flickered thoughtfully. And this requires my personal contribution. As sovereign, Nyxaria confirmed, your plasma signature carries the fundamental frequency of your entire civilization. It provides maximum resonance efficiency. For a moment, Grand Archon Korra said nothing. Her fiery gaze moving from the quantum matrix to the viewports showing her star's surface increasingly marred by spreading void spots. The Pyro's dominion has existed in isolation for 8 million cycles. She said finally, we have survived stellar evolution, radiation pulses, and magnetic storms that would destroy lesser civilizations. Never have we required outside assistance. Her plasma form intensified as she turned to face the assembled sovereigns. Yet today, I acknowledge wisdom in alliance. The Void Collective threatens not merely individual worlds but existence itself. Pride becomes irrelevant in the face of uncreation. Without further hesitation, she extended her plasma form toward the quantum matrix, allowing tendrils of her energy to interface with the complex pattern. Where her fire touched the structure, new harmonics emerged, completing patterns that had previously remained unfinished. The Council of 5 Sovereigns is complete, Ben observed quietly, feeling the historic significance of the moment. 5 rulers from vastly different civilizations, contributing their unique energy patterns to a single purpose. Quantum harmonization at 72% and rising. Nyxaria announced, her form calculating probabilities rapidly. Estimated time to full resonance, 3 minutes, 47 seconds. We may not have that long, Taylera warned, indicating the sensors showing the void entities spreading with increasing speed across the star's surface. The ship's shields won't withstand direct contact with void state, Ben realized. Computer, maximum thrust away from the star's surface. Maintain safe distance while the barrier initializes. The Rust Bucket III's engines engaged immediately, pushing them away from the approaching void entities. Through the viewports, they watched with growing concern as the star's golden surface became increasingly modeled with perfect geometric patterns of nothingness. Conversion rate accelerating exponentially, Taylera reported, her crystalline form processing sensor data. Estimated time to critical stellar mass loss, 4 minutes, 12 seconds. Resonance barrier at 85% harmonization. Nyxaria countered, accelerating final calibration sequence. In the center of the cabin, the quantum matrix had transformed into a pulsing sphere of energy-containing disks. Tink layers, botanical patterns from Floratopia, crystalline structures from the Chrysan Empire, liquid consciousness flows from the Oceanic Collective, quantum probability waves from the quantum nexus, and plasma currents from the Pyro's dominion, all synchronized into a single harmonious pattern. It's beautiful, Xylora observed, her botanical senses perceiving the matrix's complexity differently than the others. 5 entirely different life patterns, creating something greater through their union. The barrier approaches activation threshold, Nyxaria announced. 93% harmonization achieved. A violent shudder ran through the ship as something collided with their shields. Warning signals flashed across control panels as external cameras showed void tendrils reaching T-hour'd them through space, impossibly extending beyond the star's surface. They've detected our defense, Ben realized. They're targeting us specifically to prevent activation. Shields failing, the computer warned. Void state conversion detected in external hull plating. Structural integrity compromised in sections 7 through 12. We need more time, Nyxaria insisted, her form working frantically to complete the harmonization. Then we shall provide it, Korra declared, her plasma form intensifying dramatically. Ambassador, can your vessel survive if I generate a solar flare to repel these tendrils temporarily? The specialized shielding should hold against standard solar radiation, Ben confirmed. But can you control a flare with such precision? I am Grand Archon for a reason, Ambassador, Korra replied. Her flame-like features forming what Ben recognized as a confident smile. Observe. She extended her consciousness through the ship's external sensors, connecting with the solar magnetic fields surrounding them. With extraordinary precision, she manipulated these fields to generate a massive flare directly between their position and the approaching void tendrils. The resulting eruption was spectacular, a controlled solar prominence extending millions of kilometers into space, temporarily pushing back the void entities with its intense energy. Impressive, Taylera acknowledged, genuine appreciation in her crystalline voice. Barrier harmonization at 98%, Nixaria reported. Activation imminent. The void entities are regrouping, Maria warned. Her liquid form processing sensor data through specialized membranes. They adapt to solar radiation disruption. Second approach commencing. One final push, Ben encouraged as the quantum matrix pulsed with increasing intensity. Everything we've got, together. Each sovereign channeled their unique energy more intensely into the matrix. Xylora's botanical essence, Taylera's crystalline resonance. Mireya's liquid consciousness, Nixaria's quantum probabilities, and Cora's stellar plasma, all focused through the calibration systems Nixaria had designed. 100% harmonization achieved. Nixaria announced triumphantly. Resonance barrier activating. Now. The quantum matrix collapsed inward for a brief, heart-stopping moment, then exploded outward in a perfect sphere of multicolored energy that expanded at impossible speed. Where this energy touched the void tendrils, they recoiled as though burned, their conversion effect temporarily reversed. It's working, Ben exclaimed as the barrier continued expanding, now encompassing the entire star system. Through the viewports, they watched in awe as the resonance field interacted with the void-corrupted areas of the star's surface. Where nothingness had spread, reality reasserted itself, plasma flowing back into existence as though the void had never touched it. The conversion process is reversing, Taylera observed, her crystalline form analyzing the sensor data. The barrier doesn't merely prevent further expansion, it actively restores converted areas. Of course, Nixaria's form shifted with what might have been satisfaction. The resonance effect reinforces our dimensional parameters. Void state cannot maintain stability within the field. For several tense minutes, they watched as the barrier continued its work, gradually restoring the star's surface to its natural state. The void entities fought against the effect, attempting to maintain their conversion process, but found themselves overwhelmed by the combined resonance of 5 sovereign energies working in perfect harmony. Finally, the last void spot disappeared from the star's surface, leaving it glowing with healthy golden fire once more. The entity they had confronted in the core, along with its replications, had been forced to retreat, pushed back through whatever dimensional pathway had allowed their entry. Sensor confirmation, Taylera announced formally. No void state detected within scanner range. Stellar integrity restored to 97% of baseline. A collective relief filled the cabin, 5R. Eulers and one ambassador experiencing the emotional release of narrowly averted catastrophe, each in their own culturally distinct way. The barrier appears stable, Nixaria observed, her multidimensional ional form analyzing the energy field surrounding them. It should prevent further incursions for approximately 72 hours before requiring recalibration. 72 hours to develop a more permanent solution, Ben noted. And to extend the protection to our other worlds. Our civilizations owe you a debt, Ambassador Tennyson, Cora acknowledged, her plasma form slightly subdued after such intense energy expenditure. Your coordination made this defense possible. Not me, Ben corrected gently. Us. The Council of 5 Sovereigns working together accomplished what none could have achieved alone. Indeed, Xylora agreed, the flowers in her vine hair emitting a fragrance of satisfaction. Like distinct species sharing a garden, each contributing to the whole ecosystem's health. A crystalline lattice gains structural integrity through diversity of bonding patterns, Taylera added, translating the concept into terms meaningful to her people. Many currents forming a single mighty river. Mireya's multiple voices harmonized poetically. Probability streams converging to create optimal outcome, Nixaria concluded. Grand Arch and Cora studied each of her fellow sovereigns thoughtfully. Her plasma form pulsing with what might have been newfound respect. Perhaps there is wisdom in your metaphors, despite your solid perspectives. The Pyros have stood apart for 8 million cycles. Yet today we stood together, and our star still burns because of that choice. She turned to Ben, her fiery gaze meeting his directly. Ambassador Tennyson, the Pyro's Dominion Formal. Y acknowledges alliance with Earth and the other sovereign worlds represented here. The Council of Five Sovereigns has the full support of our stellar resources in combating this void collective. Thank you, Grand Archon. Ben replied formally, though his expression conveyed genuine appreciation beyond diplomatic protocol. Together, we'll find a permanent solution to this threat. But first, Taylera interjected pragmatically. We must extend this resonance barrier to protect our other worlds. The Chryssan Empire has already lost 17% of its territorial mass to void conversion. And Floritopia's western growth zones continue to diminish, Xylora added with concern. The Oceanic Collective's consciousness network experiences increasing fragmentation, Maria reported, RIP. Plus of worry passing through her liquid form. Quantum probability matrices indicate void expansion continuing on all affected worlds, Nixaria confirmed. This stellar stabilization represents our first victory in a larger conflict. Ben nodded, returning to the ship's controls. Computer, set course for the quantum nexus. We'll implement the resonance barrier at each affected world, starting with those experiencing most severe conversion effects. As the Rust Bucket 3 prepared to enter hyperspace, Ben found Grand Archon Cora moving beside him at the navigation console. Ambassador, she said, her voice pitched for his ears alone, your actions within my star's core demonstrated exceptional courage. Few beings, solid or plasma, would have risked themselves so directly against an unknown entity. I do what needs doing, Ben replied simply. Always have. Indeed. Cora's plasma form flickered with what might have been amusement. Your temporary form contains unexpected persistence. She paused, seeming to consider her next words carefully. The Pyro's tradition holds that those who share stellar fire together form a bond that transcends conventional relationship categories. Ben glanced at her curiously. Meaning, Cora continued, her plasma form shifting to emit slightly different harmonic frequencies, that I find myself experiencing unusual est in a solid being, a circumstance unprecedented in my 17,000 cycles of existence. Ben blinked in surprise, suddenly recognizing the subtle shifts in her energy pattern for what they the Pyro's equivalent of personal rather than merely diplomatic interest. Grand Archon, I'm honored, he responded carefully, genuinely caught off guard. In 5 years of diplomatic service, he navigated countless complex cultural situations, but this particular scenario hadn't been covered in any training manual. Cora's flame-like features formed what Ben now recognized as a smile. Your discomfort is understandable, Ambassador. Interspecies attraction remains uncommon even among cosmopolitan civilizations. I merely state a factual observation. My perspectives regarding temporary beings have undergone significant revisions since our cooperation. Before Ben could formulate an appropriate response, Queen Xylora approached from the other side, her wooden features composed in diplomatic neutrality, though the flowers in her vine hair emitted a subtly different fragrance than usual. Ambassador, the resonance barrier configurations require your attention, she stated, her melodic voice perfectly professional. Your unique experience with multiple transformations provides valuable insight into cross-species energy harmonization. Of course, Your Majesty, Ben replied, grateful for the interruption, yet strangely aware of an undercurrent between the two sovereigns that hadn't existed before. As he followed Xylora toward the quantum matrix, where the other sovereigns continued monitoring the barrier's effectiveness, Ben realized with sudden clarity that the diplomatic complications of the Council of Five Sovereigns might extend beyond merely addressing the void threat. 5 extraordinary rulers from vastly different worlds, thrown together by crisis, working in unprecedented cooperation, and himself at the center of their newly formed alliance, serving as bridge between fundamentally different approaches to existence. The implications were simultaneously daunting and exhilarating. For now, however, the immediate crisis demanded their full attention. Personal considerations, whatever unexpected form they might take, would have to wait until they had secured all 5 worlds against the Void Collective's continued assault. As the Rust Bucket 3 entered hyperspace, carrying the most powerful coalition of sovereign leaders the galaxy had ever witnessed, Ben found himself at a curious crossroads, diplomat and hero, human yet connected to multiple worlds through the Omnitrix. responsible for helping 5 extraordinarily different queens navigate both external threat and their evolving relationships with each other and with him. Whatever came next would undoubtedly challenge him in ways that even his extensive experience hadn't prepared him for. Yet as he looked around at these 5 remarkable leaders who had set aside millennia of isolation to stand together, he felt something he hadn't expected, not merely determination to overcome the void threat, but genuine connection to each of them, forged in the crucible of shared crisis. The Council of 5 sovereigns had been born in necessity, but something told Ben its significance would extend far beyond their current crisis, perhaps changing the very nature of interstellar relations for generations to come. And at its heart, a human who carried the universe's diversity within his very cells, a living bridge between worlds that might otherwise never have found common ground. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Quantum Entanglements. Hyperspace stretched around the Rust Bucket 3, the swirling tunnel of compressed dimensional space creating a hypnotic light show across the vessel's viewports. Within the ship's main cabin, an unprecedented gathering continued their work, 5 sovereign rulers and 1 human diplomat, united against a threat that transcended their considerable differences. Ben Studi, the quantum matrix floating at the center of the command deck, the technological heart of their resonance barrier. Its pulsing, multicolored energy sphere contained the perfectly synchronized pattern NS of 5 fundamentally different civilizations, the botanical patterns of Floritopia, the crystalline structures of the Chrysan Empire, the liquid consciousness flows of the Oceanic Collective, the probability waves of the quantum nexus, and the plasma currents of the Pyro's dominion, all harmonized into a single defensive system. Approaching quantum nexus territory, the ship's AI announced, transition from hyperspace in 60 seconds. Empress Nixaria's multidimensional form shifted from its distributed probability state into a more focused configuration. Unlike the other sovereigns, Nixaria never appeared fully solid. Her being existed partially across multiple dimensions simultaneously, creating a visual effect that strained conventional perception. When focused as she was now, she appeared vaguely humanoid, composed of overlapping translucent layers that occasionally separated to reveal glimpses of other realities before reconverging. Quantum interference patterns detected ahead, she stated, her voice echoing slightly as though coming from multiple positions simultaneously. The Nexus defense grid recognizes our approach but reports significant dimensional distortion within our primary research habitat. The void entities have penetrated your world's defenses? Taylera inquired, her crystalline form vibrating with tactical assessment frequencies. Affirmative. Prob. Ability analysis indicates 43.7% of our central research complex has undergone void conversion. Nixaria's form briefly split into multiple overlapping versions, each displaying a slightly different emotional response before reconverging. Estimated 1.7 million consciousnesses displaced or terminated. Your people, Ben said quietly, recognizing the grief beneath Nixaria's precisely calculated statistics. I'm sorry. Acknowledgement accepted, she replied, her multiple layers briefly aligning to reveal an expression of genuine appreciation for his understanding. However, present focus muse. She remain on barrier implementation rather than quantification of loss. Of course, Ben agreed, returning to the ship's controls. Computer, prepare for transition to normal space. Activate Speciale. Z quantum shielding as we enter Nexus territory. Acknowledged, the AI responded. Quantum field harmonizers online. The hypnotic swirl of hyperspace collapsed around them as the Rust Bucket 3 returned to normal space. Though, normal, hardly described what lay before them. The quantum nexus defied conventional planetary categorization. Instead of a spherical world, they found themselves approaching what appeared to be a massive crystalline structure floating in space, a perfect dodecahedron hundreds of kilometers across, its faceted surfaces occasionally shifting between states of transparency and opacity as though breathing. Surrounding this central structure, thousands of smaller geometric forms orbited in mathematically precise patterns, each connected to the others by barely visible filaments of pure energy. The probability nexus, Nixaria explained, noticing the other sovereign's evident fascination. Physical manifestation of our civilization's collective consciousness research. Each orbital node contains specialized focus groups exploring distinct probability streams. It's beautiful, Xylora observed, her wooden features catching the iridescent light emanating from the structure. Like a perfectly geometric flower blooming in the void. Beauty represents subjective assessment, Nixaria replied, though her tone carried subtle appreciation for the compliment. Our design prioritizes mathematical efficiency in probability exploration. As they approached closer, the damage became visible. Portions of the massive dodecahedron had simply ceased to exist, perfect geometric sections missing as though cut out with impossible precision. Where these voids existed, the surrounding structure appeared to bend inward slightly, reality itself straining against the unnatural absence. The conversion progresses more rapidly than calculated, Nixaria observed, her form analyzing the damage with scientific detachment that barely masked her concern. Void entities have established 17 distinct conversion points throughout the central nexus. Can your people evacuate the affected sections? Ben asked, guiding the ship toward what appeared to be an intact docking facility on one of the dodecahedron's undamaged faces. Partial evacuation in progress, Nixaria confirmed. However, consciousness transfer complications exist. The quantum nexus populatio, N, exists partially across multiple dimensions simultaneously. When void conversion occurs, it severs trans-dimensional consciousness links. Meaning your people aren't just physically displaced, Ben translated grimly, but actually fragmented across realities. Precise assessment. An individual experiencing void conversion loses approximately 63.8% of their total consciousness spread. Survivo. RS report severe cognitive disruption and identity fragmentation. Grand Archon Core's plasma form flickered with what might have been discussed. These void entities demonstrate increasing malevolence. Not merely consuming existence but specifically targeting what makes each civilization unique. I concur, Sovereign Maria added, her liquid body forming complex ripple patterns that conveyed alarm. First botanical growth, then crystalline structure, then stellar plasma, then quantum consciousness. Each attack precisely configured to maximize civilization-specific damage. Strategic targeting, Taylera concluded, her crystalline voice carrying military harmonics. Not random conversion but calculated assault on foundational aspects of each world. Ben's expression hardened as he IDED the rust bucket 3 toward the docking port. Then our response needs to be equally targeted. The resonance barrier worked on the Pyro's dominion because we implemented it at the source of their civilization's power, their star. For the quantum nexus, we need to focus on the probability core. Nixaria completed his thought. Central processing nexus where all dimensional research converges. If void entities gain complete access, they could potentially use our own technology to accelerate conversion across multiple realities simultaneously. Then that's our primary target, Ben decided. We implement the resonance barrier directly at the probability core, then expand outward to cover the entire structure. As they approached the docking facility, Ben noticed unusual activity around the port. What appeared to be Nexus security forces engaged in combat with distortions in space itself. These distortions moved with purpose, surrounding isolated Nexus citizens whose forms flicker desperately between dimensional states as they fought to maintain cohesion. Void entities directly engaging your security forces, Ben observed grimly. Computer, magnify Sector 7. The main view screen zoomed in on the conflict, revealing the true nature of the threat. Unlike previous manifestations that had somewhat mimicked the appearance of their target civilizations, these void entities had adapted to an unsettling degree. They appeared as inverted Nexus citizens, existing in precisely the dimensional spaces that normal Nexus beings didn't occupy, creating a perfect negative image effect. Where they touched normal Nexus citizens, the victims' multidimensional forms began to collapse, their consciousness visibly compressing into fewer and fewer dimensions until they simply winked out of existence. They're not just consuming reality, Ben realized with horror. They're specifically targeting your people's multidimensional existence, forcing consciousness compression until nothing remains. Dimensional predation, Nixaria confirmed, her normally detached scientific tone strained with what Ben recognized as barely controlled fury. They consume our primary evolutionary advantage and use it to strengthen their conversion capability. We need to dock immediately and deploy the resonance barrier, Ben urged, activating the ship's weapons systems. Computer, clear us a path to the main docking port. Non-lethal repulsion fields only. Acknowledged, The AI responded as specialized energy emitters extended from the hull, generating precisely calibrated fields that pushed the void entities away from their approach vector without risking damage to Nexus citizens. With the path momentarily cleared, Ben guided the ship toward the docking port with practiced precision. Magnetic clamps engaged as they made contact, creating an airtight seal between the Rustbucket 3 and the Quantum Nexus structure. Docking complete, the computer confirmed. Environmental adaptation in progress. What modifications do we need to survive inside your world, Empress? Ben asked, turning to Nixaria. Standard atmosphere composition remains viable for most solid lifeforms, she explained. Her form shifting into information-sharing configuration. However, dimensional stability varies significantly within Nexus structures. Probability fluctuations may cause temporary perception distortion and minor physical adaptations for non-Nexus biology. She means reality gets a bit flexible inside, Ben translated for the others. Don't be alarmed if you temporarily perceive things differently or experience minor physical changes. It's normal in quantum probability spaces. Botanical adaptation should occur naturally, Xylora observed, the flowers in her vine hair already beginning to shift slightly in response to the quantum environment beyond the airlock. Our evolutionary programming incorporates environmental responsiveness. Crystalline restructuring protocols active, Taylera confirmed. Her form reconfiguring at the molecular level to accommodate the unusual conditions. I will maintain consciousness cohesion through collective support, Maria stated. Her liquid body generating specialized protective membranes. Only Cora seemed concerned, her plasma form flickering with uncertainty. Quantum probability fields may destabilize plasma containment. My form requires precise electromagnetic boundaries to maintain cohesion in non-stellar environments. I can help with that, Ben offered, activating the Omnitrix. In a flash of green light, Hi's body transformed into a technological alien form with battery-like components and plugs extending from his black and green body. Feedback can generate stable electromagnetic fields to help contain your plasma form. Impressive adaptation, Cora acknowledged, her flame-like features suggesting approval. With preparations complete, they moved toward the airlock. Nixaria led the way, her multi-dimensional form passing through the barrier between ship and station as though it were barely there. The others followed more conventionally as the airlock cycled, admitting them to a corridor unlike anything most had experienced before. The interior of the Quantum Nexus defied conventional architectural principles. Corridors appeared to extend indefinitely in some directions while abruptly terminating in others. Depending on the angle from which they were viewed, surfaces shifted between solid and translucent states in mathematical patterns, occasionally revealing glimpses of other corridors that seemed to occupy the same space from different dimensional perspectives. Stay close, Nixaria instructed as she guided them forward. Uninitiated consciousness can become disoriented within probability spaces. She wasn't exaggerating. As they progressed deeper into the structure, reality became increasingly subjective. Corridors occasionally branched into multiple potential paths that existed simultaneously until someone chose to walk down one, at which point the alternatives would fade from perception, though never quite from possibility. Ben maintained close proximity to Grand Arch and Cora, his feedback form generating a stable electromagnetic containment field that helped her plasma body maintain cohesion in this dimensionally uncertain environment. She flowed within this protective bubble, her fiery form occasionally brushing against the energy field in what Ben suspected might not be entirely accidental contact. Your assistance is appreciated, Ambassador, she said, her voice carrying harmonic undertones that hadn't been present in their previous interactions. Few beings would think to offer such specific accommodation without request. Diplomacy is about anticipating needs as much as responding to them, Ben replied professionally, though he couldn't help noticing the subtle shift in her energy patterns when she addressed him directly. Ahead, Nixaria suddenly halted, her form splitting into multiple probability versions as she analyzed something the others couldn't yet perceive. Dimensional disruption ahead, she announced, her overlapping voices briefly falling out of synchronization. The primary corridor to the probability core has undergone 87.3% void conversion. Alternative route required. Can we bypass through adjacent probability spaces? Ben suggested. recalling details from his previous diplomatic visit to the Nexus. Affirmative, Nixaria confirmed, her multiple forms reconverging. Though such transition carries 23.7% risk of consciousness fragmentation for non-Nexus biology. What exactly does consciousness fragmentation entail? Taylera inquired, her crystalline form vibrating with cautious frequencies. Temporary distribution of awareness across multiple probability states, Nixaria explained clinically. Subjectively experienced as simultaneous perception of multiple potential realities before consciousness recohesion occurs. She means we might briefly experience versions of ourselves from alternate timelines, Ben translated. It's disorienting but temporary. Like dreaming while awake, Xylora observed thoughtfully. Where different possible growth patterns manifest simultaneously. An apt botanical metaphor, Nixaria acknowledged. Follow precisely. Dimensional transition in 3, 2, 1. The Empress's form suddenly expanded, creating a sphere of overlapping probability states that enveloped the entire group. For a breathtaking moment, reality itself seemed to fold around them. Not merely bending but actually reconfiguring at the quantum level. Ben experienced the transition more intensely than anticipated. His consciousness briefly fragmented, perceiving dozens of potenti. Ben Tennysons simultaneously, versions who had made different choices at critical moments, becoming heroes, villains, scientists, leaders, or remaining ordinary humans who never found the Omnitrix. These alternative selves flickered through his awareness like rapidly cycling television channels before his primary consciousness reasserted dominance. As reality stabilized around them, Ben found He had bypassed the void-corrupted corridor entirely, emerging into what appeared to be a vast spherical chamber at the heart of the dodecahedron. Here, the quantum nature of Nexus architecture reached its apex. The chamber simultaneously existed as infinitely large and precisely contained, a paradox made manifest through advanced dimensional engineering. At the center floated what could only be the probability core, a perfect geometric structure with impossible angles and constantly shifting faces. It pulsed with energy that flowed outward along countless filaments connecting to every part of the Nexus civilization. Around this core, Nexus scientists worked frantically, their multidimensional forms shifting between probability states as they attempted to stabilize sections that flickered ominously between existence and void. The heart of our civilization, Nixaria explained, genuine emotion briefly overcoming her scientific detachment. Every probability stream we explore, every dimensional research project, every consciousness expansion experiment, all converge within this core, and the void entities target it specifically, Ben observed, noting the geometric patterns of Noth. Ingness spreading through sections of the core's structure. They're not just consuming reality, they're assimilating your probability technology. Affirmative. Probability analysis suggests void entities seek to weaponize our research, using it to identify optimal conversion points across multiple realities simultaneously. The implications were staggering. If the Void Collective gained control of Nexus probability technology, they could potentially target infinite realities at once, vastly accelerating their unmaking process. We need to implement the resonance barrier immediately, Ben decided. Empress, can you interface with the core directly to distribute the barrier through your existing network? Theoretically possible, Nixaria confirmed, her form calculating possibilities. Though direct interface with partially corrupted systems carries significant risk. What kind of risk? Cora demanded, her plasma form intensifying with concern. 23.4% probability of reverse consciousness flow, Nixaria explained. Rather than imposing our dimensional parameters on void state, the connection could allow void consciousness to infiltrate the interface subject. Meaning whoever connects to the core might be corrupted by the void entities, Ben translated grimly. I will undertake the interface, Nixaria stated with finality. As sovereign, my consciousness contains the complete dimensional frequency range of our civilization. Maximum resonance efficiency requires direct royal implementation. There must be an alternative approach, Xylora protested, genuine concern evident in her wooden features. The risk to your consciousness is acceptable given current circumstances, Nixaria interrupted, her form settling into resolute configuration. Probability dictates sovereign sacrifice if necessary to preserve civilization continuity. Before further objections could be raised, a thunderous vibration shook the entire chamber. Sections of the peripheral structure simply ceased to exist, leaving perfect geometric voids that began expanding inward toward the core. Through these openings, void entities poured into the chamber, dozens of them, each appearing as an inverted nexus being, moving with predatory purpose toward the probability core. Breach in sectors 7 through 23. A nexus scientist called in alarm, their form flickering between PR. Obability states as they attempted to erect emergency containment fields. Core integrity at 61.8% and declining. We're out of time for debate, Ben announced, his feedback form already channeling energy. Everyone. Defensive positions around the core. Empress Nixaria, begin the interface. We'll protect you while you establish the connection. The sovereigns moved with impressive coordination, positioning themselves strategically around the probability core. Taylera's crystalline form hardened into battle configuration, generating refraction fields that disrupted the void entity's dimensional perception. Xylora extended botanical tendrils that secreted specialized compounds capable of temporarily stabilizing reality against void conversion. Mirea's liquid consciousness formed protect IVE barriers that absorbed dimensional fluctuations. Cora, still contained within Ben's electromagnetic field, generated precise plasma bursts that forced the void entities to maintain dimensional consistency, making them temporarily vulnerable to conventional defense. Ben channeled his feedback powers to create energy bridges between the sovereigns, various defensive systems, synchronizing their effects to create a layered protection around Nixaria and the core. Interface initiating, Nixaria announced, her form expanding dramatically as she connected with the probability core. Where they touched, her multidimensional body and the core's structure became temporarily indistinguishable, consciousness and technology merging at the quantum level. The void entities seemed to recognize the threat this connection posed. They immediately altered their attack pattern, converging specifically on Nixaria's position with singular purpose. They're targeting the Empress, Ben called, redirecting his energy fields to reinforce the protection around her vulnerable, expanded form. Concentrate defenses on her position. The 4 other sovereigns responded instantly, each contributing their unique abilities to create a multi-layered defense. Yet the void entities pressed forward relentlessly, their numbers increasing as more poured through the expanding breaches in the chamber's structure. Core interface at 47% completion. Nixaria reported, her voice strained as her consciousness spread further into the complex systems. Resonance barrier initialization sequence begun. Estimated time to activation, 3 minutes. 22 seconds. We need to buy her more time, Ben decided, recognizing that feedback's powers, while useful for energy coordination, lacked the raw defensive capability needed. I need to switch forms. Grand Archon, can you maintain plasma cohesion briefly without my electromagnetic field? Temporarily, yes, Cora confirmed, her flame-like features hardening with determination. Do what must be done, Ambassador. Ben nodded, allowing the feedback transformation to revert in a flash of green light before immediately selecting a new alien form. Clockwork. His body reconstructed into the mechanical Chronosapian, a copper-colored robotic alien with time manipulation abilities. The key-like protrusion on his head began spinning as he immediately rated a localized temporal field around the core in Nixaria. Time dilation field active, he announced, his voice now carrying a mechanical accent. This should give the Empress effectively more me to complete the interface while slowing the void entity's approach. Inside the temporal bubble, Nixaria's movements visibly accelerated as she experienced time at a faster rate relative to the outside world. Simultaneously, the approaching void entities appeared to slow, their movements becoming sluggish as they pushed against the temporal differential. Impressive chronokinetic manipulation, Taylera observed, her crystalline voice carrying genuine appreciation. Though I detect temporal strain patterns forming at the field boundaries. She was right. The intersection between Accelera, TED time within the bubble and normal time outside created visible distortions, reality itself protesting against the artificial manipulation. I can't maintain this indefinitely, Ben acknowledged, he key mechanism on his head spinning faster as he compensated for the increasing strain. The dimensional instability of this environment makes temporal manipulation particularly difficult. Despite these challenges, the strategy was working. Within the accelerated temporal field, Nixaria's interface with the core progressed rapidly. The resonance barrier matrix began to form around the core, filaments of harmonized energy extending outward along the nexus's existing probability network. Barrier initialization at 73% and accelerating, Nixaria reported, her voice distorted slightly by the temporal effects. Dimensional frequency synchronization in progress. The void entities, recognizing the imminent threat to their conversion process, changed tactics. Rather than attempting to breach the time dilation field directly, they began attacking its foundation, the chamber floor beneath Ben's position. They're trying to destabilize the temporal field by removing its physical anchor. Xylora realized, extending additional botanical tendrils to reinforce the structure beneath Ben. Crystalline support deploying, Taylera added, her form generating lattice-like structures that tempora. Riley replaced sections of floor as they began to convert to void state. Despite their efforts, the floor beneath Ben was rapidly disappearing, converted to perfect nothingness that offered no support. The time dilation field fluctuated dangerously as his concentration wavered. "I can't maintain position," he warned, the mechanical gears within his clockwork form grinding with effort as he fought to keep the temporal bubble intact while his footing literally ceased to exist. In that critical moment, Cora moved with decisive purpose. Her plasma form surged beneath Ben, creating a platform of precisely controlled stellar fire that provided temporary support. The heat was intense enough that even Clockwork's mechanical body registered danger warnings, yet Cora maintained perfect control, hot enough to replace the vanished floor but not so intense as to damage his transformed state. "I have you, Ambassador," she stated, her voice carrying unusual warmth even for a plasma being. "Complete your temporal manipulation. I will ensure your stability." Their combined efforts bought precious seconds for Nixaria to continue the interface process. The resonance barrier continued forming, now covering nearly 70% of the probability core's structure. Barrier manifesting throughout primary probability network, Nixaria announced. Void conversion reversal commencing in affected sectors. Hero the chamber's remaining intact sections, they could see the effects beginning to spread. Where the resonance barrier extended, void state retreated, reality reasserting itself as the harmonized energy of 5 sovereign worlds reinforced dimensional integrity. The void entities reacted with what could only be described as panic, their movements becoming increasingly erratic as portions of the IR converted territory began reverting to normal space. Several attempted direct assaults on the time dilation field, only to be repelled by the combined defensive efforts of the 4 sovereigns protecting it. Resonance barrier at 91% manifestation, Nixaria reported triumphantly. Core system integration complete. Full activation in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the probability core, expanding outward at impossible speed. Where this energy touched void state, conversion immediately reversed, nothingness replaced by normal reality as though it had never been absent. The void entities themselves seemed to dissolve on contact, their inverted forms unable to maintain cohesion against the perfectly harmonized resonance of 5 sovereign energies. As the barrier expanded throughout the entire nexus structure, Ben allowed his time dilation field to collapse, the strain of maintaining it becoming unnecessary as the immediate threat subsided. His clockwork form reverted to human in a flash of green light, leaving him momentarily unsteady as he adjusted to normal temporal perception. Cora's plasma form remained beneath him, providing continued support until he regained his balance. "Well done, Ambassador," she said, her flame-like features forming what Ben now recognized as a smile. "Your temporal manipulation proved decisive, as did your support," Ben acknowledged, genuinely grateful for her quick thinking. "We make a good team." "Indeed," she agreed, her plasma patterns shifting subtly in what might have been pleasure at his recognition. Around them, the chamber was transforming dramatically. Sections that had been consumed by void state reappeared, quantum architecture reconstructing itself with mathematical precision. Nexus citizens who had been displaced or partially fragmented reconvert, their multidimensional forms stabilizing as the resonance barrier reinforced normal dimensional parameters. At the core, Empress Nixaria finally disengaged from the direct interface, her form slowly reconsolidating into its standard configuration. As she rejoined the group, Ben noticed subtle differences in her apparank. New dimensional layers that hadn't been present before, shifting in complex patterns that suggested expanded consciousness. Empress, Ben addressed her with concern. Are you all right? The interface process has expanded my dimensional perception capabilities, she completed his thought, her multiple voices carrying new harmonic qualities. Direct contact with both void state and the harmonized resonance barrier created unexpected consciousness evolution. I now perceive 27.3% more probability streams simultaneously than previously possible. The interface changed you, Xylora observed. Botanical senses detecting subtle shifts in Nixaria's energy patterns. Evolution always accompanies crisis for adaptable species, Nixaria confirmed, her form shifting through probabilistic calculations. My expanded perception will prove valuable in combating future void incursions. The resonance barrier appears stable throughout your world, Taylera noted, her crystalline form analyzing sensor data from her own monitoring systems. Void conversion has reversed by approximately 94.7% based on available metrics. Confirmed, Nixaria agreed. The quantum nexus has been secured. However, her form briefly split into multiple probability versions, each analyzing different data streams before reconverging. Disturbing patterns emerge from metadimensional analysis. The void entity withdrew in coordinated retreat rather than experiencing true defeat. Tactical withdrawal rather than rout, Taylera translated, military harmonics evident in her crystalline voice. They preserve capability for future engagement. More concerning, Nixaria continued, probability streams indicate 78.4% likelihood that void entities successfully extracted significant data regarding our probability technology before barrier implementation forced their retreat. The implications settled heavily on the assembled sovereigns. You believe they obtained information they sought? Cora asked, her plasma form intensifying with concern. Affirmative. Meta-probability analysis suggests void entities specifically targeted research data regarding trans-dimensional transit mechanisms, Technolog. Why that allows consciousness transfer between parallel realities? Why would they need that? Ben asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. They already seem capable of moving between dimensions. Limited movement between adjacent dimensional spaces, yes, Nixaria confirmed. However, our research explored methods for traversing completely separate reality streams, parallel universes, with fundamentally different physical constants. They want to expand beyond our local multiversal cluster, Ben realized with growing horror. To spread their unmaking to realities that would otherwise remain beyond their reach. Precisely. Probability calculation suggests 91.7% likelihood that void entities now possess theoretical framework for constructing trans-dimensional breach points into previously inaccessible realities. Quote, silence fell as each sovereign processed the implications. The threat they faced had just expanded exponentially, from localized danger to their 5 worlds to potential multiversal catastrophe. Then our mission becomes even more critical, Ben stated finally, breaking the heavy silence. We need to complete the resonance barrier implementation on all affected worlds. Then track the void entities to their origin point and neutralize them directly. Ambassador speaks wisdom, Taylera agreed, her crystalline form resonating with strategic harmonics. Quote, defensive measures alone prove insufficient against adversary with expanding capability. The garden must be protected at its roots, not merely its visible growth. Xylora added, botanical metaphors reflecting her people's philosophy. I concur, Mirea's multiple voices harmonized. Collective analysis indicates reactive defense patterns ultimately fail against adaptive conversion strategies. The eternal flame does not merely shield against darkness, Cora declared, her plasma form intensifying with determination. It advances to consume it. Nixaria's multidimensional form calculated briefly before reaching consensus. Probability of success through offensive strategy, 37.8%. While suboptimal, it exceeds alternative approaches by significant margin. Then we proceed to the Oceanic Collective next, Ben decided, returning to his role as coordinator of their unprecedented alliance. Once all 5 worlds are protected by the resonance barrier, we can focus on tracking the void entities to their source. As they prepared to depart, Nexus scientists approached Empress Nixaria, their multidimensional forms conveying urgent information through complex probability patterns rather than verbal communication. After brief consultation, she turned back to the group. Significant development, she announced. Our researchers have identified a pattern in void entity retreat vectors. All withdrawal trajectories converge on a specific set of coordinates in intergalactic space, a region with unusual dimensional thinning characteristics. You've found their base of operations? Ben asked, hope rising at this unexpected development. Probability suggests 84.3% likelihood of primary staging area rather than dimensional origin point, Nixaria clarified. However, the locati on corresponds with scattered historical references to an event our archives designate as the fracturing, an ancient cataclysm that reportedly damaged the boundary between conventional reality and that which lies between. The space between dimensions, Ben mused, recalling fragments of information Professor Paradox had shared during previous adventures. Where reality itself grows thin. Precisely. Our scientists theorize this location serves as a natural weak point in dimensional integrity, a region where conversion between states requires significantly less energy expenditure. A staging ground for their invasion. Taylora concluded, military assessment evident in her crystalline resonance. Then we have two objectives, Ben stated, the strategic implications becoming clear. Complete the resonance barrier implementation across all 5 worlds, then investigate this convergence point. Ambassador, Xylora interjected, the flowers in her vine hair pulsing with what Ben had learned to recognize as concern. My botanical senses detect increasing temporal strain patterns in your cellular structure. Multiple rapid transformations combined with chronokinetic manipulation has taxed your biological systems beyond normal parameters. Ben hadn't noticed it consciously, but now that she mentioned it, he did feel unusual fatigue, a bone-deep weariness that transcended normal tiredness. I'm fine, he assured her automatically. We need to proceed to. The Queen of Floritopia speaks truth, Nixaria interrupted, her multidimensional perception analyzing him at quantum level. Your biological cohesion exhibits warning indicators. Probability of transformation matrix destabilization during continued operation, 63.7%. Translation. You need rest, Ambassador, Cora stated bluntly. Her plasma form shifting to emit slightly different energy patterns, concern rather than merely tactical assessment. Even stellar fire requires regulation cycles to maintain optimal fusion reactions. I concur, Maria added, her liquid consciousness forming into supportive configuration. Collective assessment indicates your biological patterns exhibit stress indicators consistent with imminent system compromise. I believe I'm being outvoted, Ben acknowledged with a slight smile, recognizing both the genuine concern behind their insistence and the tactical wisdom in maintaining his operational capability. All right, we'll establish a recovery cycle rotation. 6 hours of rest before we proceed to the Oceanic Collective. A wise decision, Xylora approved, botanical relief evident in her posture. As they returned to the Rust Bucket 3, the Sovereigns maintained a protective formation around Ben, not from external threat but from his own tendency toward self-sacrificial overexertion. This unspoken coordination wasn't lost on him. In the span of mere days, these 5 extraordinarily different rulers had not only formed an unprecedented alliance but developed a genuine concern for each other's well-being. Aboard the ship, Nixaria directed them to quarters that had been hastily prepared for visiting dignitaries, a section of the vessel reconfigured to accommodate the diverse physiological needs of 5 different species. Rest cycles have been calibrated for optimal recovery efficiency, she explained as environmental systems adjusted to create 5 distinct habitation zones. Botanical nutrient mists for Queen Xylora, crystalline resonance harmonizers for High Commander Taylora, liquid consciousness stabilization fields for Sovereign Maria, and plasm. A containment with solar radiation simulation for Grand Archon Cora. Impressive adaptations, Ben observed, genuinely appreciating the thoughtfulness behind the preparations. Your people's attendee, on to cross-species accommodation is remarkable. Probability analysis indicated 97.3% likelihood that optimized rest cycles would improve overall mission success parameters, Nixaria replied matter-of-factly. Though Ben detected subtle shifts in her dimensional layers suggesting she appreciated his recognition. As the Sovereigns moved toward their assigned rest areas, Ben found himself momenta. Riley alone with Empress Nixaria in the ship's central corridor. Her multidimensional form shifted into a more focused configuration, reducing the usually disorienting effect of her probability layers to facilitate clearer communication. Ambassador, she began, her multiple voices synchronizing into a single, surprisingly melodic tone. Personal inquiry permissible? Of course, Empress, Ben replied, curious about this unexpected approach. During interface with Probability Core, consciousness expansion allowed perception of multiple timeline variations involving yourself. Her form shifted slightly, dimensional layers realigning to reveal what Ben recognized as uncharacteristic hesitation. In 73.4% of probability streams where our civilizations interact, your presence proves decisive in positive outcome scenarios. I'm glad to hear that, Ben responded, unsure where this observation was leading. Further analysis indicates unusual relationship potential between yourself and representatives of dimensionally divergent species, specifically, probability of genuine connection despite physiological incompatibility exceeds standard mathematical models by significant margin. Ben blinked, suddenly realizing the Empress was approaching what might be considered a personal rather than merely scientific topic. Are you asking about relationships between different species? Affirmative. Her form briefly separated into multiple probability versions before reconverging. My civilization values precise mathematical understanding of all phenomena, including consciousness interaction patterns colloquially designated as emotional attachment. Your unique genetic adaptability combined with diplomatic experience creates unprecedented potential for cross-species relationship formation. And you've calculated this potential specifically regarding me? Ben asked carefully, beginning to suspect where this conversation might be heading. Correct. Nixaria's form shifted again, dimensional layers briefly aligning to reveal a more conventionally recognizable expression, something that might be interpreted as shy interest from a being who normally displayed pure scientific detachment. Personal observation supplements probability calculation. Your actions during crisis demonstrated exceptional adaptation capability, strategic creativity, and consciousness compatibility. Indicators with multiple sovereign representatives, including myself. The implication couldn't be clearer. First Grand Archon Cora, and now Empress Nixaria, expressing personal interest beyond merely diplomatic or strategic alliance. Ben found himself momentarily at a loss for how to respond appropriately. Empress, he began diplomatically, I'm honored by your observations. The connections forming between all members of our coalition are certainly unique and valuable. Diplomatic deflection noted, Nixaria observed with surprising perceptiveness. Understandable response given. Complexity of current interpersonal probability streams developing among sovereign representatives. Her form shifted to a more formal configuration, scientific detachment reasserting itself. Observation merely intended to acknowledge mathematical uniqueness of developing relationship patterns. No immediate response required. I appreciate your directness, Ben replied honestly. And I value the connection we've formed. Right now, our focus needs to remain on the void threat, but, he paused, considering his next words carefully, I believe relationships of all kinds develop according to their own natural patterns. Even across species as different as ours. This response seemed to satisfy her. Logical assessment. Probability streams remain open to multiple potential development vectors. Her form shifted back toward its standard configuration, though with subtle differences that suggested their conversation had affected her more than her scientific demeanor might indicate. Res. T cycle recommended for optimal recovery. We shall continue our mission when biological restoration reaches acceptable parameters. As she departed toward her own specially configured rest area, Ben found himself reflecting on the increasingly complex dynamics developing within their coalition. Two sovereign rulers had now expressed personal interest beyond merely strategic alliance, and subtle interactions suggested the others might harbor similar inclinations. He entered his assigned quarters, a standard human-compatible room that felt surprisingly comfortable after the dimensional strangeness of the quantum nexus. As the door closed behind him, Ben sank onto the bed, the fatigue Xylora had detected finally making itself fully known. The situation was developing in ways his diplomatic training hadn't prepared him for. 5 extraordinarily powerful rulers from fundamentally different species, forming unprecedented connections not just with each other but potentially with him personally. Meanwhile, a threat of potentially multiversal proportions loomed, one that required their complete focus and cooperation to address. As sleep began to claim him, Ben's thoughts drifted to the path ahead. The Oceanic Collective awaited, sovereign Mirea's water world with its unique shared consciousness. Then Floratopia and the Chrysan Empire would need the resonance barrier implemented. And finally, they would need to confront the void entities at their staging ground, a confrontation that would test not just their military and technological capabilities but the strength of the bonds formed between 6 fundamentally different beings. The Council of 5 Sovereigns represented something unprecedented in galactic history, not merely a military or political alliance but a genuine meeting of vastly different approaches to existence itself. Whatever developed between them, both collectively and individually, would reshape the very nature of interstellar relations for generations to come. As Ben drifted into sleep, the Omnitrix on his wrist pulsed with a soft green light, as though the device itself recognized the significance of what was unfolding in its central role in bridging woe. RLDS that might otherwise never have found common ground. Deep in intergalactic space, far from the worlds of the 5 sovereigns, a region of absolute darkness pulsed with unnatural energy. Here, reality itself grew thin, the boundary between conventional existence and void state barely maintained. Within this darkness, entities moved with purpose, not the scout converters that had directly engaged the 5 worlds, but something more fundamental to the void collective itself. These beings existed as perfect absence, their non-forms perceiving reality as an aberration to be corrected rather than a state to be preserved. At the center of this gathering, information transferred without conventional communication, the experiences of the scout converters assimilated directly into the collective consciousness. Images of 5 worlds and their defenders flowed through the void mind, the botanical patterns of Floratopia, the crystalline structures of the Chrysan Empire, the liquid consciousness of the Oceanic Collective, the probability streams of the quantum nexus, and the stellar fire of the Pyros Dominion. And at the center of these images, a single figure appeared repeatedly, a being capable of transformation between fundamentally different states of existence. A being who coordinated the unprecedented alliance between 5 sovereign powers that should never have found common cause. The void mind processed this information, calculating new conversion strategies to overcome the unexpected resistance. The resonance barrier represented an unforeseen obstacle, 5 different reality patterns harmonized into a single defensive system that actively reversed conversion progress. Yet the void mind remained untroubled by these setbacks. Conversion represented inevitable mathematical certainty rather than merely possible outcome. Reality would return to void state regardless of temporary resistance. Division would resolve to unity. Separation would end. New scout converte RS began forming within the darkness, more advanced than previous manifestations, specifically designed to counter the resonance barrier's effects. Meanwhile, the information extracted from quantum nexus as probability technology underwent integration into void collective processing, expanding their conversion potential beyond the local dimensional cluster. And moving through the darkness, barely distinguishable from the void entities themselves, another figure observed these preparations with calculated interest. Neither fully void nor conventional matter, this being existed in the boundary state between realities, watching, assessing, occasionally guiding the void mind toward specific strategic considerations. For while the void collective sought universal conversion through mathematical inevitability, this boundary dweller pursued a more specific objective, one that required precision targeting rather than indiscriminate unmaking. The boundary dweller's attention focused particularly on images of the transformed defender, the being called Ambassador, whose genetic structure contained multiversal potential. Something about this specific entity triggered recognition patterns in the boundary dweller's consciousness, memories from before its transition to current state. As new scout converters finished forming, the boundary dweller imprinted specific targeting priorities into their void consciousness. 5 worlds would still face conversion, but one defender would receive particular attention designed not merely to eliminate resistance but to achieve specific transformation outcome. For in the space between realities, where existence itself grew uncertain, even the void collective served greater purposes than its own mathematical drive toward universal unmaking. And as the new scout converters departed toward the 5 sovereign worlds, the boundary dweller returned to the deepest darkness, where plans set in motion thousands of years earlier approached their culmination. Plans that would reshape not merely the local dimensional cluster but the very structure of the multiverse itself. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.